Welcome to the SOB 22 rankings to this point so far. This will be a comprehensive breakdown of all 32 users and their accomplishments thus far in SOB 22. Um, this is the general rules of the rankings. To run down these really quickly, the rankings are based off of each user's resume for Madden 22 to this point only. No prior Maddens will be taken into account when doing these rankings. So no Madden before Madden 22 will have any bearing or value in these rankings. Rankings are not purely based off of regular season or postseason success individually, but rather a collection of the two as well as other factors. So someone's full resume will be taken into account for this Madden, not only the regular season success, not only the postseason success, but a collection of the two as well as some other nuanced factors that may not be surface level data that you can pull. Um, some users may be close enough where one user could be argued to be over the other or better than the other or ranked higher than the other. Um, my reasoning for having team A over team B will be justified if I feel it's close enough or nuanced enough to do so. I will justify having certain teams ranked above certain other teams if it's generally close and you can make an argument for one team being over the other team. I will explain why I believe a certain team should be or is ranked higher than another team on my rankings. Um, all records and resume builders are from SOB 22 seasons 1 through 5 only. Season 6 and beyond will not be included for now, despite it having already started at the time of recording this. Um, Season 6 has already begun. It's well on its way, I believe a few weeks in. Um, from nothing after the Chiefs and Cardinals Super Bowl, Beige and TJ playing the Super Bowl will be accounted for in this video or in this breakdown at all. So none of that is being considered at this point in time. Any questions you may have can be posed to me in the SOB chat, and I will answer as soon as I possibly can. Regarding your ranking, regarding why someone was ranked over someone else, regarding like what I considered um, when ranking things, anything else like that. And lastly, these rankings or any final SOB 22 rankings, which are not, this is not that video obviously because SOB 22 is still going, it's not over, have not yet been determined to decide the order of SOB 23 team selection. They are only for entertainment purposes at this time. So we don't know if we're going to go back to the random team selection. We don't know if we're going to stick with like prestige based team selection. We don't know if we're going to go reverse prestige based team selection. It could be a number of different things. There's not really a determination on that yet, and I'm assuming there won't be until well closer to Madden 23. But this for right now is just for entertainment purposes as well as like trying to get an idea of where everyone ranks from 32 to 1. So jumping right into number 32. You have Wade here. He came in at number 29. I had him going into the year in terms of my confidence rankings. So I had him already pretty low. He dropped down to the bottom spot for right now because he is currently one of only two users with less than 20 total wins, um, including the regular season and postseason. Um, and he has I believe the lowest win percentage of anyone on the list with 21.1% winning percentage, which means he wins just barely over 1 in 5 games, which is just not very good at all. Um, and it shows that he should be the bottom spot for right now. Um, Also, I want to clarify that I will try to refrain as little as possible talking about or digging into the gameplay aspect of everyone's game and like how they play this year because I haven't been able to um, educate myself on everyone's play style and what they like to do, what their strengths are in terms of just play style and strategy. Um, so I am going to be looking purely and mainly at or mostly at the resumes and what people have accomplished. Um, as you can see, there are notable accomplishments or achievements to the side. Um, the notable accomplishments slash achievements will be the list will grow like the further we go up the list. For right now, we're at the bottom with Wade, so doesn't have that many notable achievements, hence why he is number 32. 1867 is his total record, and that's sitting at 21% win percentage. His highest win total in the season is 6. His lowest is 2. So he has pretty much a ceiling and a floor of 2, a ceiling of 6 so far, showing kind of where his range is at this point in time for this Madden. And his main and key notable achievements are regular season upsets over Swag, Raw Dog, Bug, AB, who is the Texans user, and Rondo. Those are his key achievements, and his only really notable achievements to this point, this Madden. So to clarify, regular season upsets will be a mainstay in these resume builders. Like there'll be a clear point for a lot of these users. Realistically, you could put it for almost every user once you get until you get to the very top, because you know what's constituting is an upset in my brain. Like what's an upset on this list in my brain is, first of all, for it to be an upset, um, the team that you're beating cannot be in your division, because even if the team that is in your division is ranked higher than you, you have 2 shots at them at least every single year. Um, and eventually, you're probably get, even if they're much better than you, you're probably gonna at least get one win and break through and beat them. Like it's happened to almost everyone. It's very rare to sweep someone every year for the entirety of SOB. So just taking to what constitutes an upset in this context of this ranking, division upsets are not considered. Those are considered, you know, rivalry games, and those won't be considered for upsets. An upset is considered a non-division team that would be favored against you in a given game, that you upset and you beat. So if you were to say, Wade against one of these guys, Raw Dog, and he beats Raw Dog, well, Raw Dog was favored against him, by the Batting League metrics or by general consensus. If there was a bet on the game, most people would likely bet on Raw Dog, because he would be favored. So that is an upset. So that's what constitutes an upset on these lists. Regular season upsets will be a mainstay for most of these users' resumes, until we get high enough to where the regular season upsets are not one of the most notable achievements for a lot of these users, which is further up the list, I should say. Um, but yeah, this is Wade's kind of resume to this point. It's not very impressive, but you know, realistically, these bottom 5 or so teams, all it takes is 1 or 2 really notable regular season upsets to push them, 4 or 5 spots up. So all it takes is Wade to beat, like, a Beige, Mike, Trells, uh, Console, somebody like that, TJ. And if he gets a win over one of those guys, realistically, he could automatically jump up 3, 4 spots, depending on the impressiveness, um, of the upset. Um, you just have to pull that off, obviously. So he's not anchored at the bottom. Right now, he's at the bottom. He has good opportunity to move up. Just needs to really pull off. It's going to be easy to move up the lower you are, because you just need to probably pull out 1 or 2 pretty significant upsets in the regular season, and you move up. It's similar to college, how college football in real life, like how if a small program pulls off a big upset, it's how they kind of grow the program and move up. So similar in the concept as that. So moving on to number 31, we have Hickson, DJ Hickson, who is a new user to SOB. His first Madden in SOB, as far as I'm aware. He came in unranked because he was not on the initial list of users when I ranked all of them from 1 to 32 based off of or 32 to 1 based off of competence. Um, but he comes in at 31 here, second lowest. He ranks ahead of Wade primarily because he has a few more wins and pretty much equal impressiveness in terms of upsets. He has upsets over Ricks, Swag, Mitch, Pep Pearson, Saints, Justin, Bug, um, and he has a few more wins. So pretty much equal impressiveness in terms of regular season upsets. What gives him the edge is a few more regular season wins, 3 more. Um, he has a lower ceiling, kind of, than Wade, apparently, I guess, as opposed to Wade, with, I think his range was 2 to 6. Um, TJ Hickson's range is shown to be 3 to 5, which is higher floor, lower ceiling. But all in all, few more overall wins. Which, it doesn't, just by having an automatic better overall record or regulation record doesn't automatically put you ahead. But when you break everything down, uh, just between Wade and TJ Hickson, um, what gives him the edge are the 3 more wins that he has. Um, I also want to specify and clarify, before we get any further, that I'm aware that some of these games for a lot of users are forced wins, but you can't go through and break down every game that's a forced win and say, well, if this user would have played and this user wouldn't have played, it's just too many ifs and buts. So it's like I pretty much consider a forced win as an actual win in the context of this because or even a fair sim because like that. I mean, that's what sucks the most, I guess. But forced win is like one team wasn't able to play because of scheduling or because the game disconnected or whatever. Like ultimately, force wins a win. In the context of this, it's impossible to break down every game uh, and keep track of all the force wins and like where they were and how they impacted everything. Like it's just too much to do. It's pretty much impossible. So those force wins will count as a regular win in the context of these. So keep that in mind. Uh, if you're giving up on your season, you're out of the playoffs later in the year. Um, you're questioning, what do I play for? I want a better draft pick. Well, playing for a better spot in the rankings because you get a few wins at the end of the year, even though you're out of the playoffs. It might separate you 3 or 4 spots ahead of where you would have been if you would have just gave up and tanked the rest of the year. So that's an incentive and something to think about because TJ Hickson is right now slightly ahead of Wade. Like I said, that can change. Wade gets a few more wins this season than him, or he makes a very impressive upset. Then he can go ahead and notch himself above TJ Hickson. But for right now, this is where it is. They stand at 32, Wade 31, TJ Hickson, and moving on to number 30, we have GB&C came in at number 28, currently number 30. So I was pretty close with Wade and with GB&C. Like I was reasonably in range. Wade I had at 29, ended up at 32, so within 3 spots. GB&C 28, currently 30, within 2 spots. So pretty close with both of those. Not dead on. I think I got a few of these dead on to this point, but obviously it's not over yet. So we'll see if things can kind of line up a little bit more, or if they get further away in terms of their starting rank and current rank. Um, so what kind of separates him is obviously the one extra win that he has over TJ Hickson, which is 22 as opposed to 21 wins. Regular season upsets are virtually similar, like they're very similar. Regular season upsets over Bug, Pearson, Ricks, Raw Dog. Um, he obviously also has a higher ceiling with 7 wins, so he's a range of 3 to 7, as opposed to Wade with 3 to 6, or I'm sorry, 2 to 6, and obviously has the same floor as TJ Hickson with 3, but has a higher ceiling than either him or Wade. So, I mean, that's clearly what separates him. He has 1 game edge. These margins are razor thin. So, like I said, whether it's Wade, TJ Hickson, GB&C, one of these guys can really truly separate themselves with a big upset over a top tier user. All of them have upsets over fairly good users. Nobody, I'd say, who is a top tier user per se. But for right now, that's the 32, 31, 30. All the 30s are taken care of there. The resumes and notable achievements will grow, like I said, as we get further down the list. But for right now, these users who haven't really accomplished much, their only notable achievements really to this point are pulling off upsets against, mid-tier to higher tier users. And it's not awful, but that's all they really have at this point. Whereas a lot of other users will have a lot of other notable achievements that we can talk about and kind of dive into. So for right now, that's kind of cutting it short per user and kind of like just discussing why I'm separating the small margins here between the bottom 3 spots. But that's where we're at right now. Either 3 of these guys good opportunity to move up. They just gotta win some games. Obviously, that's how you move up his way. Moving on to the first spot in number 20 in the 20s, number 29, Uptown, came in at 31. Excuse me, currently at 29. So that's pretty close as well. So pretty close on all these so far. Um, he's the second user along with Wade to be sub 20 wins total. He actually has a lower winning percentage than Wade. However, his impressive feat that separates him from the other three users right now is a playoff berth in the first season. An 8-9 record is a losing record, but he did clinch a playoff berth. The loss to Peoples was a playoff blowout loss to Peoples, but I mean, an appearance is an achievement for sure and will very easily separate him over the other three users, barring just a complete debacle, not being able to win any games really going forward, unless one of them get like really something super notable. They won't be able to really surpass that 8-9 season. That's a quality ceiling for, even if it is the first season, it's a quality ceiling for a user like Uptown, um, and that really separates him from the other three for right now. Um, and he obviously has regular season upsets over Trells, Xavier, and Smoke. That's like, if just alone, honestly, if it was just he didn't have that playoff blowout loss to Peoples, he just had these upsets, he'd be in the same spot, truthfully, because that's three top tier users right there. Three really, users who have the capability of winning the Super Bowl. And he beat all three of them in different times, but he did, and that alone separates him. Those are the upsets I'm talking about. It's probably going to be harder for the three, TG Hicks and Wade and GBNC, to move above Uptown with the resume that he has. But all it takes is one of them to have a winning season, a playoff berth with some upsets in there. One subpar, one on par season in which they have a winning season and miss the playoffs but pull off some upsets can really push them ahead. It's going to take a little bit more than the bottom three spots to move up to Uptown's level, likely, unless, like I said, Uptown continues to kind of falter and collapse, in which case, his one season will be kind of regarded as a complete fluke and likely won't hold as much weight if he doesn't even have another season that's close to at least, around 8 wins. Because so far he's ranged from 1 to 5 if you cut out season one, which just isn't ideal at all. But, based on his resume to this point, although he does have the lowest winning percentage of any user, um, his highs are higher than any of the other guys so far. And I do value consistency, but their consistency is, what, 5 wins as opposed to, I'd rather have like somebody who can get into the playoffs once in a while than someone who averages 5 wins, um, personally. So that's why he's at number 29. I think that's the clearest one for me so far. The bottom three, I feel like you can make an argument to kind of move them around. The only thing that really separated them was um, a couple wins, really. So, but with Uptown, his resume looks pretty strong for a lower user for right now. But moving on to 28, we have Hat. This is first one that is probably the most disappointing user to this point in the season. Obviously, the other users were kind of expected to be around where they were, as you saw in like the previous ranking, and then TJ Hickson comes in as a user who is new, as a rookie user essentially. Whereas Hat's a veteran. Came in at number 18. I had higher expectations for Hat so far this year. He's disappointed. He's in a tough division. I'll admit that. I'll acknowledge that. He does have GBNC in there, which has been a rivalry between him and GBNC. But other than that, Beige and Rondo have given him problems and troubles. It's tough for him to succeed in a division like that. Um, so that's rough. But he has a lot of talent on the roster. You just can't put it together seemingly. It is disappointing so far to not have a playoff berth. If you're Hat at this point, it's rough. But it's 30% winning percentage, the only one that we've covered this far with a 30% win rate, and with pretty on par upsets almost to Uptown. With a 10% uptick in win percentage over Uptown, coupled with quality upsets in his own right. Second best list of regular season upsets, I say, next to Uptown for right now. They both have Smoke on their list, which is that's high regard. That's a highlight for Tat, and that's like a highlight as well for Uptown, but he also has Xavier and Trells and a playoff berth. So you could make the case that Uptown realistically has had a better season or a better SOB this year than Hat. But I give him the edge because of like the 10% uptick in win percentage, as well as considering well considering Uptown plays in arguably the weakest division in the league, probably in all likelihood the weakest division in the league, whereas Hat plays in one of the strongest divisions in the league. So considering that, like that's what I'm talking about with like the things that don't necessarily show up on the sheet are like the difficulty in divisions. That's really nuanced and that matters a lot. So um, going to his resume in terms of regular seasons, you see on the side there, he's had two 7-win seasons, and he's had one win season in which, he is pretty much publicly, all but publicly announced, if not publicly announced, that he was tanking. So you take that into account as well, like and I'll get in. I'm gonna get into tanking in a second. What I think about that and how that affects this list, if at all. But you look at the other four seasons, you have a floor of 5, a ceiling of 7, in all four seasons where he tried to win. So I mean, that to me, that's better than any of the other guys. I think he's better than 28. I think if I had to pick anyone to not end up where they are and to go up, I think it's easiest for Hat to go up because all it's going to take is one good season, which I know he has in him. So hopefully he can put together one good season. I'll be as objective I'm supposed to be for these lists. I'm going to be pulling for Hat to put up at least one good season and to see him do well. Everyone loves to see Hat win at least one season. But right now he's at 28. And moving on to number 27. We got Chris Greenwood, started at 22, currently at 27. So he dropped 5 spots, but still same general range that I had him coming in. Um, getting to tanking though. Getting to tanking before I forget about that. Tanking. So my philosophy on tanking this list is, it's still going to. I'm not going to like absolve your tanking and just say, oh well, they were tanking this season. That makes it okay, or that makes it, fine. If you tank, the thing is, um, you're essentially admitting that. Oh, well, cancel. So moving on to number 27, which is Chris Greenwood. But before I get into his resume and why I have him at 27, etc., I'm going to discuss what I talked about or what I touched on with that and didn't get to until I moved to Chris Greenwood. Um, is that my philosophy on tanking within the context of these rankings, which essentially is thus. It so if you tank, to me in my brain, it's one of three reasons, right? It's either A, you feel like you can't win the Super Bowl that year, or legitimately contend for a Super Bowl against another team, or just in general without having a really good draft, having a bunch of draft picks, getting some really good young talent to build a core off of. You either B, see really good player or multiple really good players in the draft that you're not going to be able to get unless you tank for them, and like you feel like it's worth risking or like giving up on your season, essentially giving up on your whole season, um, to in hopes of creating the core foundations for a dynasty. So that's the second one, and then the third one is real world stuff. You have to go out of town for business, vacation, family stuff, whatever. You know, um, and unfortunately, all three of those, regardless what you want to say, that's just part of the business. Not really gonna. I will try to touch on if a certain season like was a user tanking or not, but ultimately I'm not gonna like just completely null a season for someone because they were tanking. It's on them. Even the family stuff, that sucks. That's a part of it, unfortunately. So um, all three of those, they're going to be held against you if you tanked. Like that's just the way it is. That's the penalty of tanking ultimately. Um, Keep in mind when you tank going forward, really going to affect your rankings. Um, you could realistically drop yourself 5 spots ultimately when it comes down to it, because you tanked one season. It could really hurt you that bad. It really could. Like look at Hat. Hat if Hat played out this last year that he played last season, season five, and he tried to win, and he won 6 games, he could be 3 spots higher realistically right now. Um, but right now he's at 28. Um, so now talking about Chris Greenwood after I covered the tanking philosophy or the context of tanking within these rankings. Um, obviously 36% win percentage is the highest win percentage that we have on the board so far. He is tied with Uptown for the highest ceiling, as well as a floor of 5, which I believe might be the highest. 5 to 8 might be the highest range that we have. I don't know. Um, so he obviously hasn't done anything spectacular, but no less than 5 wins is clearly in my brain higher than everyone else, as well as the resume to the side, which is upsets over Trells, J Will, Swag, AB, which is the Texans user. Um, Clarifying that because it hasn't really been called that or referred to as that in the chat, but that is what he wants to be referred to as. So, um, but yeah, so the regular season upsets on par, I'd say uh, with Hat maybe even before that with like everyone except for like Uptown. Um, it's really that's quality upsets. It's one really good upset. J Will's a quality user. That's a quality upset. Swag and AB are like mid tier upsets. That's fine. His best achievement is People's one regular season loss in 16-1 season. I'd say that's his best spot on his resume. I know I discussed said division losses aren't upsets. I usually are not going to put them on these rankings like what individual division upsets, but this one in particular, his one loss in the only season that has been a one loss regular season to this point is very impressive, and that's worth mentioning. So I think that alone kind of is the most impressive singular upset in the regular season, probably so far. Maybe not the most shocking, but the most impressive, like the most valuable regular season upset to this point because you prevented a guy from going undefeated in the regular season. Um, so that's probably the most valuable regular season upset to this point, and what separates him primarily as well as his win percentage over the other users to this point, which even could push him further. You can make an argument it pushes him further down the list, but I'll justify why I have other people ahead of him when we get there. And the 14 to 16 division record, which is a 46% win percentage, almost 47%, which essentially kicks his win percentage up 10%, essentially saying that teams within his division, he plays them so tight. Um, it's truly rivalries between him, TJ, between him and Peoples, between him and Hickson. Those are 3 rivals truly because he almost wins pretty much 50% of the games, and it's a huge uptick in his overall win percentage. 10% uptick is significant. So maybe if he played all division games, he would have be a higher spot on this list. Plays people. The more he plays people, maybe the more wins he gets. It seems as opposed to playing people he doesn't know as much, and has 10% decrease in win percentage. So, but moving on to number 26, have Eric. Um, he's spot on 26 coming in, 26 now, as I currently have him. So he has easily, I think, the most impressive resume so far. Is because of the double-digit win season. So that's clearly far and away what puts him. He's the only one who has had a winning season out of anyone on the list so far. A winning season automatically essentially puts you on the map as like ahead of any of the other teams because they haven't had winning seasons. Uptown had a playoff appearance, was 8-9, losing season. He finished pretty much 8-10, counting a playoff loss that season, as opposed to finishing 11-6-1, counting playoff loss for Eric. But a total win percentage that's higher than anyone so far, even over Chris Greenwood, 37.7%. Playoff appearance, a division title, which no one else, I believe, has to this point. Yeah, Uptown made it as a wild card team, if I'm not mistaken. Um, Obviously, a double-digit win season, and then upsets over Xavier, Pearson, AB, Ricks, Jason, who is the Bucks, and TJ. That's impressive. I didn't even know when I put it like that. I usually try to order it like in terms of like impressiveness in my brain, considering how the user matches up against another user. But TJ at the bottom, and that strange, um, because that's an impressive list of upsets, truly. Um, that coupled with the winning season, the highest winning percentage so far, um, a division title clearly puts him far away above Greenwood. So as impressive as Greenwood's one regular season upset was, and the rest of his resume to this point, I think this is the threshold in which everyone before Eric would have to pretty much achieve what he achieved, which is a winning season playoff berth, probably a double-digit winning season playoff berth, to surpass him. So this is kind of where the line is drawn. Um, aside from this, like aside from him, um, people, pretty much anyone could probably move up with a significant regular season win. Like if Trells or Beige or Xavier or somebody like that they go 16-1, and you're that one loss. Well, one of those guys are that one loss. And it's more impressive. They could very well move ahead of Chris Greenwood just off that one win. So, but I mean, this is where you draw the line here because that's a legitimate resume. We're starting to get into the legitimate resumes here, as that's something to be fairly proud of to this point. 26, even though he's 26, 11-5-1 records, nothing to laugh at. And he did lose to Smoke. Sure, they play here and there. They're brothers, as far as I'm aware. So, um, it's always tough. Play your brother, someone who knows you so well in a playoff game. So can't really even hold that against him. But yeah, that's it's a good resume so far, and probably easily the most impressive resume to this point. Despite a floor of 4 wins this past season, a ceiling of 11.5 is clearly far and away most impressive and valuable. Moving on to 25, we have Tuan, still pretty close in terms of range. He came in 20, currently 25. Pretty disappointing so far, not severely disappointing because it's only 5 spots. The biggest disparity, obviously, thus far has been Pat coming in at 18 and now being at 28. So 10 spots. Other than that, I've been fairly within 5, I think, for everyone else. So I've been pretty close, guessing where everyone would be. 36% win percentage, so lower, I believe, than Greenwood's and Eric's. But I'll explain why I believe he is slightly above, despite not having a postseason appearance. That is because he has 2 winning seasons, shows at the top there, as opposed to one. He has a 10-7 season and and a 9-8 season, sandwiched. Um, we're sandwiching a 7-win season, 2-win season, a 3-win season, but 2 winning seasons nonetheless, as well as a double-digit season, which in my mind, a 10-7 season in the AFC North is equivalent to an 11-5-1 season in the NFC North. Realistically, this Madden. So in my mind, that like kind of cancels each other out. Um, and then he has the other winning season, and then he has, frankly, probably equal, if not greater, regular season upsets over Rondo, Peoples, Smart, Beige, Key, Justin. So I just clearly I did not do the regular season upsets in order of impressiveness. I guess I just kind of put them there, um, by essentially random. So, um, but yeah, no, it's in my mind, you could certainly make a case for Eric to be ahead of him. I wouldn't I wouldn't like put up a significant argument with that because I don't think it's that like clear. I think it's pretty close. But the thing is, like in my mind, the consistency of having 2 regular season winning seasons, as opposed to just one with a playoff appearance in a division title, put that contextually, like it's in the NFC North and it's 11.5 wins. One with 10 wins didn't even make the playoffs. Like, I mean, it's just kind of luck of the draw at that point. And to me, Twan has a more impressive resume, slightly edging out um, Eric, just barely. I think that if neither make another playoff appearance, Eric could still surpass him. It really, honestly, looking at the head-to-head, if this were a final rankings, the head-to-head probably would have been the edge here. I didn't really look at that because usually I don't bring that into play, except for like the very last resort. Um, but or maybe even I would bring in potentially playoff head to head as like a legitimate thing if it's significant. Um, but obviously they're not going to play in the playoffs with two different conferences. But I think if as a final ranking, if it stays this close, and the rankings are to determine who picks over whom in the next Madden, I think I will use head to head if it stays this close to determine who kind of edges out the other because it's that close to me right now. That's probably the closest gap or the smallest gap between two users to this point. Moving on to 24, we have Mitch. He obviously was unranked coming in at 24. He wasn't on the initial users list. This isn't his first Madden, so he's not a rookie. He just wasn't on the initial list that I was given. Has the highest winning percentage so far with 41%, only one in the 40s, I believe, to this point. Um, he has a pair of winning seasons, a blowout loss to Peoples, 4 or 5 seasons with 7+ wins, a division title, and regular season upsets Smoke, Ricks, Swag, Jason, and Mike. So a fairly good resume. I mean, clearly, I think the best resume so far. Well, the reasons are, I think he kind of clearly separates himself. A, he has a higher winning percentage than Twan and Eric. That's clear. B, he has the same amount of winning seasons as Twan, 2. Um, C, he has the same amount of playoff appearances as Eric. Um, and D, he has the same amount of division titles as Eric. And then, lastly, I'd say, 4 or 5 seasons with 7+ wins. He's pretty much shown that like traditionally, once he got his footing in Madden, after, not scratching out the first season because it matters. But once he got his footing on how this Madden works, his floor was 7 wins, even without Aaron Rodgers. With Gunslinger and all that to kind of anchor him. So he's kind of like evened out, and say he's going to get 9 or 7 wins pretty much. He does have a floor of 4. He's shown he can play that bad, but he's gotten his footing. 7 to 9 wins, that's pretty good, as well as all the other reasons, as I said. That they think that clear cut has him at 24, and he's very clearly above the other two who are very close together. They would both have to have a quality season to overtake him as the number 24 spot. I think he's very clear cut as the number 24 user at this point in time. So I don't think I have really that much more to discuss in terms of anything below him compared to him. But we might compare him to people above him depending on how the resume is compared to his. Moving on to 23, Raw Dog. He came in at 17, currently 23. So I think he is the second highest drop to D Hat, which was 10 spots. I believe Raw Dogs is 6 spots. Um, Now, we obviously have there's similarities between him and Mitch. I think Mitch clearly you can see has the higher winning percentage. Mitch, Raw Dog comes at 39.5. I think Mitch had 41 or so. But you look at the resumes, notable achievements. You have 2 double-digit win seasons, 2 10-win seasons, which Mitch did not have. He had 2 9 and 8 seasons. He had no double-digit win seasons. So 2 10 and 7 seasons are far more impressive, especially considering they're in the AFC East, a much stronger division than the NFC North, which, like I said, is objectively the weakest division this year. One playoff blowout loss to Xavier, as well as a playoff appearance. Well, that is the playoff appearance. This is the playoff blowout loss to Xavier. And in that year, he won the division, albeit, a lot of speculation that Key and Console kind of both purposefully fumbled down the stretch of the year. But I mean, like I said about tanking, it's kind of on them, not really on Raw Dog. Raw Dog did what he was supposed to do. He won. When they faltered, he took advantage of other people kind of messing around. So he went ahead, won the division, lost in the wild card round, but 2 10-win seasons is strong. And then these upsets, pretty much as good as the upsets get, like in regular season. He has upsets over Smoke, Bug, Ricks, Xavier, Beige, Swag, and Pearson. That's strong list of upsets. Strong list of upsets. But overall disappointing for Raw Dog because obviously he came in at 17, so he's pretty mid tier, and then dropping to 23, which is a little lower tier. So I mean, he's in a tough division, but he has a really talented roster, so he's definitely underwhelmed. And you'd think he would pick it up, but even at this, this isn't terrible, and this isn't like outside the realm of possibility of where I believed he would be. So, it's about right, I'd say. Um, and I think you could make a case that Mitch is above him for sure, higher win percentage. Um, 2 playoff appearances as opposed to one. Um, but like I said, I think the primary thing to consider is the context of stronger division, which is clearly Raw Dog's division, AFC East. It's much stronger um, than the NFC North. Sorry, and he's obviously the first person ranked in the AFC East, as opposed to Mitch, who is already the third user ranked in the NFC North. There are 3 users already ranked in the NFC North. This is the first user ranked in the AFC East. So it just kind of gives you an idea of like the AFC East is much stronger. It's harder to win, slightly lower winning percentage, about equal resume pretty much, um, in a harder division. So I give the slight edge to Raw Dog, although, if the NFC North picks up a little bit, or if Mitch, has one more good season, Raw Dog doesn't really show it, he could pass him. So that gap is pretty thin between these two as well. It's not, I don't think it's very clear cut between like who has the 23rd spot and who has the 24th spot, but I think there's a clear gap between the 24th spot and everyone below them, and then so on and so forth. But moving on to 22, you have Cuzzo, who's now the second greatest drop. It was Raw Dog. Raw Dog's now the third greatest drop. D had the first greatest drop. This is the second greatest drop, which is 8 spots from 14 to 22 from a user who is legitimately contending to be in a conference championship. Every year you could potentially appear in a conference championship every year, essentially, at the very least, divisional round game. And he's fallen to kind of like truly like a perennial uh, drafting at 12, 15. Just it's not been very good. Um, but I mean, the highest win percentage still out of everyone, 43%. Um, a double-digit win season, playing in the AFC North, which is one of, if not the toughest division. Um, all season except for 7+ wins, which is something. And even the one he didn't win, it's 5 wins. Now this is the one that's probably the most controversial so far. Um, I guess you could legitimately, seriously say that Raw Dog um, has had a better Madden to this point, considering the difficulties of the divisions are probably equal. And Road Dogs had 2 10-win seasons, as opposed to Cuzzo's only had one winning and one double-digit season in which he lost to Beige in the wild card. But frankly, like Cuzzo showed up a little bit more, I think, in his playoff game first of all, whereas Raw Dog kind of got just wiped by Xavier. And I think that Cuzzo is kind of um, I think he's in a slightly probably tougher division, because you look at Xavier and Mike, who have both won a Super Bowl, and obviously no one in the AFC East has won a Super Bowl. So I just think I think I give it degree of difficulty. I'd give a slight edge to I give a small edge to Cuzzo in terms of degree of difficulty, um, but it's not the gap isn't large, and you could even argue Mitch above both of these guys, Raw Dog um, and Cuzzo. Truthfully, like you really could. So the margin is razor thin when it gets to here, and I don't know, with these type of razor thin margins, if they stick like this, then I think head to head will be kind of imperative to bring into the fold. Like I said, for the final rankings, like to really truly be like, okay, well, it's very close, but this user, has a head to head edge over this user. Um, but if it's tied somehow, then like kind of I still have to go with the gut instinct. So it gets tough. Sometimes you kind of have to lean with the gut. This time, I guess I kind of went with degree of difficulty, as well as he's the highest winning percentage out of any of the either any of the three. 43% is pretty good, as well as playing in a really tough division. So I think that justifies it enough to go ahead and move on to number 21, which is Jason, which is arguably the most controversial ranking to this point. He is the first user to move up a considerable amount. Started at 27, moved to 21. That's 6 spots. That's impressive. He's clearly overperformed what he was expected of, especially considering the degree of difficulty of his division. But I'm sure Raw Dog won't be happy about this, because this essentially it clear cut put Raw Dog right now at the bottom of the AFC East. Whereas I still think you can argue any of the last 3 users who were ranked: Mitch, Raw Dog, Cuzzo to be ahead of Jason. So it's still a very close cluster, a really close cluster right now, where any of them could be above any of them. But I'll explain why I have Jason above the pack right now, right? And it's the key and main reason, truthfully, like as much as you want to say, playoffs aren't gonna like just be the only thing that matter. Um, what trumps it is clearly the playoff upset victory of Rondo. Like he led in that game as far as I'm aware. Rondo, battled back, and then even though he battled back, took the lead, Jason still had enough heart and will to go out there and win the game. He said, he made a comment, I believe, like I'm hoping Alex watching do the rankings for the rankings and stuff, and I was watching and I was paying attention, and it definitely stuck out. And that's the main thing, the key thing that has him at 21 is that game because everything else is pretty much, he's a little behind, if not dead even. He's dead even, if not a little bit behind. He's right on par with the last three guys, if not, like I said, a little behind. 35% winning percentage, but that one win gives him the edge because that's a big game. That's your season. That's like to advance in the playoffs. That's the playoffs. We're talking about playoffs. We're talking about playoffs. Playoffs. We're not talking about practice. We're talking about playoffs. But 2 winning seasons, a division title, playoff appearance, lowest ranked team to have a playoff win. That too, like he's at 21 and he has a playoff win, so he's the first user with a playoff win. I think that clearly puts him ahead. I mean, you can make your arguments and stuff and say whatever you want. I think the playoff win clearly puts him ahead, honestly, truthfully. Like, I don't think anyone is going to convince me that he should not be at number 21 because of the playoff win. I don't think anyone's going to really truly make a compelling argument that says he should not be at 21 because truthfully, the regular season success is fine and dandy, but like getting blown out, giving up 60 points in the playoffs like Raw Dog did, or getting blown out like Mitch did, or getting beat by 21 like Cuzzo did, like in the playoffs, like they're pretty much all blowout losses, and then getting a win in the playoffs, that's like you're playing the best users, and you're getting a win. That's just impressive. That separates him, I think, very clearly. Even with his bottom season, which is, or his floor, which is one win, bad. But having the ceiling and the highs that he's had, consistency does matter. But with 2 winning seasons and one of those being, impressive playoff win over Rondo, like who's been a quality user in his own right this year, right? Rondo's not a bad user. Like Rondo's been a good user this year, and to go ahead and be the underdog in that game. One of his only playoff games that I've ever seen him play. I think is the only playoff game I've ever seen him play in SOB, going in there and winning it. That's impressive. And obviously he lost to Ricks in the next round, but Ricks was on fire that season, and all credit to him. And I'll get to him later, obviously. But man, like Jason, been impressive this year. To be in this division, right? To be in this AFC East division. Obviously, I have it down there. 10-10 combined record against Console and Key. So he is between Console and Key. It's a toss up. It's a coin toss with 2 users who have won Super Bowls in SOP. They have won Super Bowls. Like, and it is a 50-50 coin flip against Jason. That's how well he's playing his division. Like that is impressive. That's truly impressive. And then to kind of put it at the bottom at this point when we get to this point, and I say it for Jason, which is just impressive. Like like a round of applause for Jason. Like that's impressive. But like this is essentially resume fluff at this point for the users like this who have had this type of resume. Regular season upsets, if you see them going forward, they're pretty much just fluff on your resume, right? They're not really like super significant, but he does have upsets against Pearson, Casey, Bug, Ricks. It's worth mentioning at least, but it's just fluff kind of for these guys because it's just like icing on the cake. Like, it doesn't really matter that much. Um, but yeah, I think clearly he's 21. Like I spent a lot of time on that, but I just really want to make it clear. Although I think it's going to ruffle some feathers. I think that he is clearly number 21, and I don't think it can really be disputed, like with a legitimate argument, truthfully. Um, so moving on to number 20, the top 20. Here we go. We got the first 12 out of the way. Moving on to number 20, we move to AB, who we mentioned when we mentioning some like upset victories that the other users have had. We've mentioned him a few times because, truthfully, he'd probably be favored in a lot of those games. Well, he would be favored because he's he's been, pretty good this year, pretty under the radar good. Not been great in any way, and that's why he's not getting noticed or recognized as much, but he's been pretty good. Obviously came in unranked, came in his first year in SOB, I believe, recommended or brought in by console, so that's obviously prestige in and of itself to be brought in by console. That's like a high praise. Um, he obviously is the closest to 500 to this point. We have not ranked anyone who has a total win percentage of 500 to this point, but he has, 47%, almost 48%, which is almost 500. Jason does have 500 winning percentage in playoffs, but that's the playoffs, not total win percentage, which is accumulation of your regular season, postseason success, and games. So obviously, look, going down to his resume, he obviously has a playoff loss in season 4 to console, a pair of winning seasons, one double-digit win season, tied with Swag for highest regular season win percentage for a team with a losing record. So that basically means like someone who has a losing record, he has the highest win percentage for a regular season with a team with a losing record. So anyone who's sub 500, 500 or lower, or I guess sub 500, he has the highest sub 500 record tied with Swag. Um, and he's regular season upsets over Peoples, Trells, Mike, Key, Beige. I mean, you say that's going to be fluff, but I don't think that's fluff for this for that. That's wow. That's like Peoples, Trells, Mike, Key, like that's impressive. That's probably the best list of regular season upsets we've seen so far. Like that's super impressive. That's five of the best users in the league right there. That's impressive. That's truly impressive. Um, and then 24 and 18 against teams that finish with a losing record that season. So pretty much saying that like if he plays a team that is losing that year, he's usually most of the time going to handle business, and he has a winning percentage, so he does what he's supposed to do. He's a 10% uptick almost when doing that. So I guess to get to where the point of justifying him over Jason, right? Because you look and you say, well, he doesn't have a playoff win. Raw Dog, Cuzzo, Mitch, all of them, they have similar resumes to him, but they were ranked below Jason because they didn't have a playoff win, right? That's what you just finished saying, is that Jason is ranked ahead of him because of that impressive playoff win. So how are you going to say that and then go ahead and rank AB ahead of Jason? Well, it's simple, right? I mean, highest winning percentage for a losing team, right? 47%. That's substantially higher than anyone else's by at least 5%, I believe. Very close to 500. Um, two winning seasons, and very clearly far and away 12 win season. Like that sticks out. Like 11 and a half wins for Eric, but I mean 12 wins in the AFC South to me is like the equivalent of like 14 in the NFC North. Um, honestly, like so, like that's an impressive feat to get 12 wins. So it's a 12 win season. It's being 47, almost 48% win percentage. Um, like that's impressive. Having a 48% win percentage, getting 12 wins, um, despite only making the playoffs once. I think keeping in mind the context of the difficulty of getting a 12 win season in the AFC South. That's impressive. And then you consider, you want to say compare him directly to Jason and be like, okay, well, still Jason has the playoff win. He doesn't. Well, I think, Jason being what 12% lower than him in win percentage is enough to be like, okay, that's too substantial, regardless of the playoff success. That is too substantial of a win percentage disparity to go ahead and say, okay, well, the one playoff win is going to give you the nod. I can do 5 to 7, 5 to 8% probably, maybe even 10, but 12%, anything over 10 is just like that's really reaching. Like, I mean, he's clearly been the better user, and his resume has kind of showed it, despite not having playoff success. Being dealt the bad hand with literally he had the last pick, he had the Texans as which Jason didn't have a high pick either, right? But having a bad team and being almost 500 with that team in your first year in the league, I know how tough that is. Like coming in, like I was pretty much a 500 team in Madden 17. Like I was 9-7, I think, my first year, so it's pretty much 500. So coming in with a team that lacked talent, like and going almost 500 with them, that's about on par, which you want to see from a user who has potential to be up and coming. Um, and I think you legitimately could put Jason over him. Like if you're a guy who's like, okay, I value the playoffs like far more than anything regular season, which I usually do. But like I said, there's a line that you have to draw, right? And if it's 12%, if it's a 12% uptick in win percentage, I think that's the line right there, right? Like you can't say, okay, he has 47%, Jason has what 35, 36%, and you're gonna rank um, Jason above him. I just think it's unreasonable to do that. Um, Truthfully, and that 12 win season sticks out in the AFC South. 12 wins the high for anyone that we ranked to this point. 12 wins is substantial, and then like the closest that we said was 11 and a half with Eric, but 11 and a half in the AFC North, like we said, not as impressive as 12 wins in the AFC South, which is probably like worth 14 in the AFC North. If you talk about currency exchange from between countries and stuff, like how much a dollar is worth in other countries, like that's like essentially the same thing. Like you transfer currency over, and wins are worth more in another division. Honestly, truthfully, like if you get 5 wins in the one of the toughest divisions in the league, the AFC North, that's truthfully worth like 8 or 9 in the NFC North. I honestly believe that. Like honestly, like so you have to take division difficulty into account because user playing those users twice a year every year is just that's tough. So I think that kind of explains why I have him above Jason, despite Jason having the playoff success. So I think we can move fully into the top 20 now with number 19, with Bug, who's the second user, I believe. Yeah, second user in the AFC South, back-to-back AFC South users. After not having been ranked in the bottom 12, they got two to start off the top 20. So he's pretty close to what he came in. He dropped a couple spots. Hasn't been super disappointing, quote unquote. But hasn't exceeded expectations. He's been a little disappointing, but like not severely. About at what we expected. You have 4 users in that division who are fairly evenly ranked, or not ranked per se, but I guess fairly evenly matched in terms of skill. And the difference is kind of their team building and their adjustments and all those things. But going to that division, that's where he's pretty much evenly matched. I'd say user skill wise with the other three. I think this is fair for Bug to be in. Like if you told me he was, but like if you told me after the rankings, which and you asked me, like what is your prediction for Bug this season? Um, Considering that Jay Will Ricks and this new guy that Council brought in um, are going to be in his division, what's your prediction? Like, what is he going to do? I'd probably say like he'd probably drop a few spots because that's pretty even competition with him. He's not going to be able to feast off of a bad division. Um, Not to say that he did last year necessarily, but um, that's competitive. Like that's 6 competitive games you're gonna get every year, really, and that's what he's gotten. He's gotten what I would have probably guessed. But I'd still put him at 17. He's at 19. Not a far drop off, not significant. But to get into like his actual record, a pair of playoff appearances, um, which I don't believe we've had so far. I think this is the first user with 2 playoff appearances, with multiple playoff appearances. I'm pretty sure we've had users with multiple winning seasons, but I think this is the first one with multiple playoff appearances, which I think is the significant separator when talking about um, who should we rank ahead of the other. And I should have probably brought head to head with him and AB because I'm actually not sure who wins the head to head on that. I should have looked into that um, to probably get the who should be ranked ahead of whom here. Um, but I still stand by having Bug ahead of him. I think he's shown slightly higher ceiling on a regular basis. Well, although it's contradictory to what I just said with AB having 12 win season, so I guess he does have technically a higher ceiling. I think I guess Bug has better consistency than I should say, not a higher ceiling is what I should say. Although I still think Bug does have a high, like in his potential, in his innate potential, I think he has a higher ceiling. Like I think he could reach the championship game, whereas I think AB hasn't shown me that to this point. But obviously, 2 winning seasons, 2 playoff appearances, a double-digit winning season, upset victories over TJ, Key, Beige, Pearson, Mike Rondo, Just Smokes. That's a lot of upsets, but yeah. Highest ranking AFC team with a losing record and total win percentage. So um, I don't think that's accurate, actually. That's not accurate. Highest ranking AFC team with a losing record Oh yeah, no, that is accurate. I'm just saying he's the highest ranking team, not the highest winning percentage. So yeah, he's the highest ranking AFC team with a losing record. Essentially, there are 17 teams with a winning record that are above 500 this Madden. There are 15 teams with a losing record. He is the top team with a losing record in totality this Madden. Okay, that's what I'm saying essentially. Um, so 10 wins in the regular season. Obviously, that's doubled in his first season. Lost the console. 8 wins. Missed the playoffs. 9 wins. Lost to Mike. And then 6 and 7. So his floor's been 6. His ceiling's 10. And a wild card loss essentially. Now, why do I have him above AB? I think the primary reason is clear, and it's the 2 playoff appearances. It shows a higher rate of consistency. It's 2 playoff appearances to 1. And the win percentage is just a tick under. I think this is 45. I think AB's was 46 or 47. Um, so I think the 2 playoff appearances kind of trumps the 1. Now, head to head probably could decide that. Like I said, this is another instance in which I would pull head to head into this. Um, if this were our final rankings to determine the order of next men, I would have pulled head to head into this and like really took that into account because that's important for this. But because it's just halfway through, it's just midway through. I didn't bring that. I didn't decide to bring that in for really any separators, but I think that would be the difference maker for this. But for right now, it's just the 2 playoff appearances. So you could very well argue AB to be 19 right now. He's 20. They're division rivals anyways, so they can sort that out. They're going to get each other twice a year every year, so they'll have plenty of opportunities to move ahead of one another. But for right now, that's 20 and 19. And moving on to 18, we have swag. And this is going to be pretty controversial, but I will get into this, and I have a lot to say about this as well. And this will, no surprise, be uh, connected directly to the difficulty of the NFC East, which I believe personally is the most competitive overall division from top to bottom in the league, truthfully. Um, so now, obviously, he has 3 winning seasons, which is insane to say he has 3 winning seasons and no playoff wins. Excuse me, no less than 7 wins a season, 32 and 23 in non-division games, which is a 58% win percentage, 10% higher than overall. Excuse me, than his overall winning percentage. So, when he plays non-division games, he has a winning record with 58%, which is substantially an improvement over 48%, which takes into account the totality of his games, including his division games. Um, Highest winning percentage for a team without a playoff berth, and most winning seasons for a team without a playoff berth. He has the most winning seasons of any team we've ranked. Period. 3 winning seasons, 3 9-8 seasons in the NFC East. Like you talk about trading currency and like how if you go into another division, how much a win would be worth. 9 wins in the NFC East is like would be like 15 or 16 in the NFC North, truthfully. Like you have to play Trails twice a year. You have to play Smoke twice a year. You have to play Casey twice a year. That's 6 games that are against Super Bowl caliber opponents, teams that could legitimately go win the Super Bowl. That's 6 games every year he's got to worry about. And he went 9 and 8 in 3 of them, and 7 and 10 in 2 of them. Like that's just it's consistency. It's 3 winning seasons. Like it's just that's valuable. Like it's impressive to me. I think considering the degree of difficulty of his division, if you know what you're talking about in terms of degree of difficulty of a division, then like you would agree with me. I don't think if everyone understands the difficulty of the NFC East, I think that there won't be a legitimate argument or pushback on this. I think for people that don't understand, maybe there will be. But I mean, I've been in tough divisions like that, and I know that it's different. Like I've been in a cushy division, I've been in tough division. Tough division, if you lose a game, you were legitimately in fear of like you can smell blood in the water in the sense that like you might not win the division. Like you could lose a game, like it could be a specific game, right? Like a division game, and that could cause you to potentially eventually lose the division. Like you could tie, you know, 13-4, 14-3, and lose the division. Instead of getting the number 1 seed, you're the 5 seed, and you have to play in the first round against a quality 4 seed. That's a big difference. So, um, 3 winning seasons despite no playoff berths. 3 winning seasons, 2 seasons with 7 wins. You know, no horrible seasons from Swag, no great seasons from Swag, but 3 really, solid seasons plus 2 mediocre seasons. Um, I think his resume kind of speaks for itself. 48% win percentage, And obviously, I think the highest uptick so far from 18 to 25, I think +7 is the highest uptick. So I think he's moved up the most of anyone I've ranked to this point. Like he started and came in at 25, moved into 18. I know he was more prominently known and better generally when he played with his Falcons back in like Madden 18 and prior to that. And he kind of won the division, owned that type division and stuff. So he was never really bad. It's just that my last memory of him, I think, like after that was like just not as good as this. So this is really good. Like this is super underrated. I think like what he's doing with the Giants is not being talked about enough, and it's because he doesn't have playoff success, and because he's the worst user and team in a division stacked full of quality users. So I get it, but hopefully he breaks through and makes a playoff and makes a playoff run and he pulls off an upset because I would love to see him being talked about more and getting some more credit that he deserves. Because he flies under the radar as that type of player. But moving on to number 19 or apologies 17. Came in at 19, currently number 17. Jason the Bucks. Here we have um, so I will justify obviously where he's at and stuff. But starting off, obviously, came in at 19, currently 17, moved up a couple slots. Think he did he flip with Bug? No, no, Bug. What? No, no, no. Yeah, Bug didn't come in at 17. Never mind. Um, but obviously, the first user I think on this list with a winning record, 55%. So like that's obviously important. There are obviously 17 users with a winning record, like I said, in total win percentage. He is the bottom ranked winning user, which obviously that's not the best thing to say, but like to be ranked as a winning user, I think is cool. So like it's good, it's cool for him, I'm sure, to say that he's a winning user. He has a winning record, which is nice. But getting into his achievements, 2 seasons of 12 plus wins, which no one else has had so far, right? We've only had 1 season of 12 wins, and that was with AB, I believe, right? Yeah. So having 2 seasons, or a season of 13 wins, which is the highest score right now as far as we covered, and then getting a season of 12 wins as well, and pairing that together, and then having also a 9 win season. Um, no, I think that clearly, with an overall winning record, I think that clearly puts him above everyone else to this point. Even playing in a division that's not bad. NFC South, it's not bad. It does have a way to as the bottom ranked user right now, but um, two other users in C. Martin Pearson who are both certainly competitive, certainly competitive. So it's a tough division, and it's about a middle of the pack division, and getting wins there is certainly not easy. So only 1 season of double-digit losses, which is his one bad season. Every other season's been not bad. 8 and 9, 12 and 5, 9 and 8, 13 and 4. Take the 6 and 11 season out. He's what 42 and 28. Like that's what that's a 6 to 4 ratio, so a 3 to 2 ratio. Um, so 60% win percentage. So give or take. Math just did all that in my head, so forgive me if the math's off, but it seems like a 60% win percentage, which is, that's quality. If you take that 6 and 11 season out, 6 out of every 10 games you win. Um, Obviously, one of 17 teams above 500 in total winning percentage, like I mentioned. And then to fluff it at the bottom, regular season upsets over console, Mike, Casey, Peoples, Justin, J. Will, which at this point, just really isn't that important, but it's nice to put on there and just have and say that you beat those users, I guess. Um, but I think he clearly kind of separates himself from the previous guys we've ranked, which are Bug, AB, because of the winning record. First of all, obviously, and Swag. I'm sorry, and Swag. Um, the last three guys. Because of the 2 seasons with double-digit wins, obviously 12 plus wins, the 3 winning seasons, the 2 playoff appearances. I think they all stand for themselves. They speak for themselves. And although he hasn't achieved, I'm sure, what he's like to achieve with the Bucks, he sits at 17, which is he's moving up. And you move up a little bit every year. Eventually, maybe you're in the top pick in the top 10. You get a really good team. To start off, you break through and win a Super Bowl. You never know. So he's moving forward, and that's more than you can say for a lot of guys. So kudos to him at currently at 17. And uh, ending with a 13-4 season. He could bring a lot of that momentum into this season, season 6, and go ahead and ride it for some playoff wins. So we'll see. Moving into the top half. 16. Moving into the top half of users here. Now, we have Pearson, who obviously also has a winning record, 45-40, 1-3, 46-43. Going down. He obviously clearly has the highest uptick of anyone. He was largely an unknown because he did play last Madden, but he didn't play much, and when he did play, he didn't have like winning records or anything. And albeit I think he joined with like a bad Jets team, so not to hold that against him or anything. Um, uh, but at that point, that's all I had to rank him off of, so it just wasn't ideal. Uh, but with the Saints this year, in a division that's not easy, like I said, two users, the first two users with winning records that I've ranked are from this division. But a mid-tier division, it's a quality division. Um, to do what he's done is impressive, and to move up 14 spots is I think it might be the biggest rise of anyone on the list. I didn't keep track of rises and falls as much because I didn't highlight it because this isn't like a final rankings. When I do the final rankings for this SOB, I probably will do rising and falling from probably mid. I'll probably have a middle, starting, before the Madden, middle of Madden, end of Madden type of thing. Um, but I'm pretty sure he has the highest rise of anyone. If not the highest rise, then one of the highest rises. Um, with a 45-40 record, 1-3 in the postseason. Getting into his achievements here now. Obviously, a playoff upset victory over Peoples, 3 double-digit win seasons, which I don't think anyone else has had to this point that we ranked. 1 division title, 1 of 17 users above 500 total winning percentage, which I mentioned with Jason, with the Bucks. I meant one of our regular season upsets over Rick's, J. Will, TJ Trell's, Xavier Console, which you say is fluff, but I think that's a nice thing to put at the bottom right there for him. So what ranks him ahead of the Bucks, right, Jason? That's another instance where head-to-head probably would come into play, right? Now, and it really should, like here, and it would if it were rankings in which it's the final rankings. If it's determining the draft order, like I said, then I probably would put him ahead of, or not ahead. Excuse me. I would rank head to head, like as the tiebreaker between the two. I apologize for that. That was confusing, but I would put head to head as the tiebreaker here. Um, but for right now, the tiebreaker in my brain is the playoff win. They're pretty close, but the playoff win separates him. He obviously beat Peoples, who is a quality user now. Peoples has struggled in the playoffs, obviously. He hasn't been a beast in the playoffs, but he's been competitive in the playoffs, very competitive. We'll get to that later, but to beat him in the playoffs is no easy feat. And then, he put up a relatively competitive game with Trails in the playoffs, so pretty good run there in season 5, and in season 4 he had a 1-point loss to Casey, if my memory serves me correctly. So that's impressive, to play a 1-point nip tuck game with Casey, and then to play, to beat Peoples in the wild card, upset him, big upset, and then to play a competitive game with Trells, in the playoffs in Philly, who coming in, to the 1 seed, is a strong team that he's built, and play a competitive game. That's impressive. I think that's the separator, is that playoff win, and then the extra appearance, right? Um, Even if that one of the appearances was a loss to Justin in the wild card, I believe that's the season Justin went on to go to the Super Bowl. So really no shame in that at all either. So I think the separator clearly is the playoff win and the extra appearance. But I think head to head would probably separate it if I involved that here, but I didn't. So moving on to 15. Now we're officially in the top half. Well, I guess we were last time, but this time we're in the top 15. So very clear and away, far and away, top half. And actually, I didn't even notice that until we ran through it. But what's that? That's 3 of the NFC South users in a row. So we have NFC South 17, 16, 15. That's funny. And the whole NFC South is pretty much middle right there. Like I said, pretty much middle division, other than Wade, who's kind of holding down the overall division ranking, I guess. But that's they're all fairly they're winning users. They're three winning users. They can say that. Like none of them have had great success in the playoffs. One combined playoff win between the three of them. Um, but to be where they're at, it's impressive. Obviously, C-Mart came in at 12, dropped to 15. We'll get to kind of dig into why in a minute, but to run down his resume here, he's got highest winning percentage for any team without a playoff victory. That's I guess not a great something you want to have on your resume, right? That's not something you want to have, but he does have it. 60+%, 10% over Pearson, and only team in 60% plus win territory thus far. Number one seed in season three, so the only number one seed that we've named so far. 15-win season in season three. One of 6 seasons was 15 plus regular season wins. So I've been 6 seasons thus far of it in this SOB of 15 plus wins, 15 or 1 to 116, obviously, with from Peoples. And he's one of the 6, and he was the number one seed, obviously. 2 division titles, 3 playoff appearances, and no seasons with double-digit losses, which is, I think, although it's at the bottom, I think that might be the most critical, if not the most critical factor in this, is that he has no season with double digit, which means his floor is 8, which is really strong. To have a floor of 8 wins is very strong, and then a ceiling of 15. If he had playoff success, he'd be in the top 10, like he just would. If he made a conference championship, he would be in the top 10, like right now. Um, so he has a clear path to improve and to move up, as well as the other 2 users, right, in the NFC South. Both of them, if either of them make a run to the NFC Championship, they'll both probably be in the top 10 too, or one of them. If any 3 of these guys in the NFC South makes a run to the conference championship game, I think that's a top 10 spot for them as of right now. As where everyone stands right now, I think that's pretty much a top 10 spot. So that gives them incentive to, obviously even more of an incentive to make a run, but to be at 54-31 and have a high winning percentage at 61%, plus 3 double-digit win totals. So I guess the question is, why do you put him ahead of Jason, or why do you put him ahead of Pearson, right? So I guess the first and biggest thing is um, the 2 division titles, which I don't think either. Well, no, yeah, Jason does have 2 division titles, right? I believe, but 2 division titles is impressive. But I guess the main separator is the win percentage, is what I meant. 61%, certainly an uptick, and really an improvement upon what the other 2 kind of has shown. And I think that's the separator, right? So we probably factor in head to head again. Although I don't think it would be a tiebreaker here. I just think it would matter, but it wouldn't be a tiebreaker. I think C-Mart would probably still hold serve because has such a substantial lead on win percentage. He's the only one at 60%. I think that's enough to kind of hold off the other 2 and kind of maintain his 15th spot and his top spot in the NFC South. He's the top spot, or the top ranked NFC South user, and I think that would stick regardless of head to head. And then you talk about the 2 8-win seasons, and he's kind of talking about how he's kind of have to like go on trips and stuff for work or whatever, and like that's kind of impacted that. So I think he probably would have made the playoffs at least 4 to 5 seasons, if not all 5 seasons, if he would have just not traveled or whatever. But I mean, that's part of the business of playing an SOB, so it is what it is. And right now he is where he is, but barring the constant misfortune I guess he's had in the context of SOB, he has a good shot to move up. One trip to the NFC Championship game, which I think he has in him. I predicted him to be in the tier of making at least one conference championship game this Madden, and I still stand by that. I still think he will make one conference championship game before this is all over. I know he doesn't have a playoff win yet, but that'll probably be the biggest knock on ranking him here above Jason, who does have above Pearson, excuse me, who does have a playoff win, not Jason. Especially over Peoples, who's impressive. I think that will be the biggest knock, is that he doesn't have a playoff win, but the win percentage edges him over, and I think that his ceiling is clearly higher. I think shown if you go win 15 games in the regular season, I just think that's not everyone can do that. Like right, I think maybe there's 10 guys in the league who can win 15 games in a season, like at least this Madden maybe. Um, so basically, he has the potential to be top 10 user at the very least, right? But his resume isn't there. So that kind of covers why I have him where I think where I think he should be, and that can move us to 14 with Key. And here we go. I'm sure everyone's excited about this to see him at 14. I mean, I'm sure some people wanted him lower, but to have him at 14, the way he's been talking and stuff, I would be lying if I said I didn't take a small amount of joy at the very least in ranking him at 14. Although I wouldn't have hated him. I wouldn't have hated to see him succeed a little bit either. Just entertaining to see uh, the hassling and the taunting, especially after he's done it to so many others. It's definitely satisfactory or satisfying to a degree. But to get into where he was ranked and is ranked now, he dropped 9 spots, which I believe is the second highest drop off next to Hat. At 10, he dropped 9 spots to this point from 5 to 14. Certainly disappointing. And, you could certainly make the case, 10 percentage points below CMAR that he is below CMAR. Like you could very well make that case, but I'm about to make the case why I think he's above him in a second. Um, but obviously, look at the postseason wins 1 and 2, and he's just barely above 500. So it's like you could really make a legit case that CMAR is above him, like for sure. Like, and I would not really put up much of an argument, but I will present what I have of my argument now, and it's only because I ranked him here, and not because I'm defending Key or anything. But the top thing on his resume and the key reason why he is above CMAR is the playoff blowout victory over Beige. Like to blow out a user like Beige in the playoffs is extremely difficult. It is very, very difficult to blow out a user like that, and he did. Um, and then he played a close game with Jay Will in the next round. So he realistically could have made it to a conference championship that year, but he didn't. But I mean, regardless, and Beige has attributed it to the snow in a large part, but I mean, regardless of what you want to say the reasoning is, he's played plenty of snow playoff games before, and he's won plenty of them. So he can make whatever excuses he wants. The reality is, like, he went in there and he beat the brakes off Beige, and that's the key reason why he's over CMAR, right? Because Beige is, I mean, it's no secret he's the only one with 2 rings right now, right? So it's like to beat a guy the only guy with multiple rings this Madden, in a Madden with extreme parity and you know influx of like all this talent and all this change and all like the randomness and like it's just really impressive. You know, I think that's what separates him over Seymour, despite being 10% down. That's a playoff game. Like that is a playoff blowout victory over the only user with a pair of Super Bowl rings. Um, that's just that's all you really have to say, and that's the reason why it's above CMAR, truthfully. But to touch on the rest of his resume, which isn't bad, but which isn't great. The rest of his resume is not as impressive as CMAR's, but that one is what edges him over, in my opinion. 2 double-digit win seasons, 2 playoff appearances, 2 playoff losses by a combined 7 points, so 3.5-point average margin of losses in the playoffs. So both close playoff losses. One to J Will, one a redemption victory by Beige, but it was just a close game. One of 17 teams above 500 in total win percentage, like we touched on with some other users. So he does have he's above 500, and he has regular season upsets over Mike, Casey, and J Will. So not super impressive on the upsets, but obviously has the playoff upset, which is that's his crowning achievement in his resume. That's the thing that's saving him right now, truthfully, because without that, he could drop substantially. Like he could drop 5 or 6 more spots, honestly, if he didn't have that. But I think that's impressive enough to dismantle Beige like that in the playoffs is impressive enough to kind of anchor him at 14. So it's kind of funny that like all that talking and that one win has him where he's at. And maybe he keeps kind of playing mediocre and that kind of fades into the background. And it's like, well, that was one fluke season, right? He's just like he got lucky, played one good game, but like at 1 out of 5 seasons to do that. it sticks out more. But if it's like 1 in 10 and he doesn't do anything else, he's gonna plummet. Like he's gonna plummet. But so he has to show up and he has to add to his resume. He's got to keep updating it. You can't just keep sticking with this and relying on this. But that one playoff blowout victory has him where he's at, and that's kind of all you have to say about it. Especially, it's more about, I guess, respect for Beige rather than um, the value of a playoff victory. Because had he beaten maybe anyone else, or even not beat him as bad, I'd say maybe he'd be a few spots lower. But to beat an only user with 2 rings and in the fashion that he did, that's the only time Beige has lost like this, like that, this man in the playoffs. Um, that is certainly impressive. So to move to 13, after talking about Key for a while, moving on to Rondo. A lot of the guy who's rubbed a lot of people the wrong way as well, but with a 53% win percentage, and also another guy who's over C-Mart, who you say C-Mart has 61, Rondo has about 54. What's the deal with that? Like you just justify putting uh, C-Mart ahead of Pearson because of win percentage, and now you have Key and Rondo above C-Mart, who you put above Pearson, who has a playoff. Well, it's simple, right? Pearson had a narrow playoff victory over Peoples, 3 points. Key and Rondo both have blowout playoff victories over users who are ranked above them. Now, Key obviously has a blowout victory over a Super Bowl champion, a two-time Super Bowl champion this Madden, and Rondo has a playoff blowout victory over Ricks, who has been good, not great. So you could say that alone less impressive, but a blowout playoff victory is still impressive. And then you look at Rondo's overall resume, and his overall resume it's more consistent, it's better, right? So his first season, it's pretty much largely and widely known and accepted that he tanked, right? So although I'm holding that against him still, um, I still I'm not like saying that's like his floor, truthfully, because like I think if he actually tried, like I don't think his floor is 2. That's clearly a tanking season. Like, right? So his floor has kind of been 11 and his ceiling's been 12. So he's been really consistent, really steady, 11 or 12. Pretty much 11 all the way through, 3 out of 4, 11. So it's like, with 3 playoff appearances. He missed the playoffs one season with 11 and 6, which is just a testament to how strong the AFC has been. Um, he obviously has regular season upsets over Console Mike Jassim Trells and a combined 15-5 record against GBNC and Hatton Division, 75% win percentage, basically puts him as the clear de facto number 2 in the division behind Beige, like very clear cut as a number 2. 15-5 record is just it's kind of it's dominant against 2 other division opponents, so kind of clear cut puts him as the number 2 in the division if that was in question. He moved up overall 8 spots so far, so that's good for him. Um, so you look at his one playoff win, obviously, he beat Ricks and then lost to Beige in a pretty competitive game the next round in a season, I believe, in which Beige went on to win the Super Bowl. Yeah, season 3, yeah. Um, and then, the second season, narrow loss to J Will, I believe. And then season 5, he got upset, obviously, to Jason. So I think, having 4 double digit win seasons I think is something what we haven't had before, right? Yeah, because C-Mart was closest, and he obviously has 2 8-win seasons. So the 4 double-digit win seasons is enough consistency paired with the blowout playoff victory over Ricks, where it's like that's not as impressive as a blowout victory over Beige, but it is. It's still impressive, and then that paired with the 4 double-digit win seasons is more impressive than Key's overall resume. So that puts him ahead of Key. Now, I think this is another one where I go head to head. If it was a final ranking, I go head to head, Rondo or Key. It would be determined by head to head ranking, truthfully. Um, Depending on, because that's how close it is, depending on if anyone had an advantage or not. If it was tied, then no. But for now, Rondo's ahead. He's at 13. And I think that pretty much covers why I have, well, A, I have both of them over C-Mart right now, and B, why I have Rondo over Key. And where I have Rondo where he is. But here, speaking about Rex, talking about Rex, we referenced him in the last one. Says impressive, and he's been surprising honestly this season a little bit. A little bit surprising, honestly. Well, I think pretty surprising. Making an AFC Championship game, I did not expect that from him at all. So I'll be honest and say that I undervalued him a little bit. 16 to start the year. I think 12 is definitely a much better spot, and he comes in as the second highest ranked user in the AFC South, which has been a pretty quality division, pretty well rounded division. No user outside the top 20 in the AFC South. So, you know, definitely quality division. 45 and 40, obviously. Postseason record of 2-2. 500 postseason records, nothing to scoff at. Obviously 47 and 42, 52% win percentage. So, I mean, you look at a lot of these guys who are hovering just above 500, and Seymour's probably like a little upset, being at 61%, which is, substantially higher, to be completely honest. But I mean, he has no playoff wins. Got to add to that playoff resume, and then I think it'd be much easier to move him up. But so obviously Rondo and Key both had one playoff blowout victory, whereas Ricks has had two victories. I mean, I think one blowout over Jason, and then a pretty competitive game to with J Will. I think I'm not sure if it was competitive or it was a blowout. I don't remember the margin of victory of that game, but point is two playoff wins to one on both of them, so that gives him an edge. Their win percentages all hover around the same, and obviously the AFC Championship game against Bees, that's an even higher caliber game, obviously, than Keep, and they played them to 1 point, and I mean, this is a higher quality of Beach that we've been getting in the last three seasons, from season 3 to 5. It's been clear cut that like this is like legit Beach, as opposed to like the first two seasons, which where he was finding his footing. Um, but still, regardless, not to take away from Key's blowout victory, but he's still finding his footing early in the Madden, and then now he's kind of clicked into a rhythm, and he's very hard to beat. Um, but the AFC Championship appearance, he lost by a point, 26-27. uh, he could have won that game, and he really could have won the Super Bowl. Like he was that good. Like he could have beaten TJ in the Super Bowl. Like he's really good in season 5, and he's hoping to carry momentum going forward. But obviously, double-digit win totals in the last three seasons: 11, 10, and 13. Um, a pair of division titles and regular season upsets over TJ, Beej, and Casey. So it's like I think what separates him from Key and Rondo is that he has the amount of playoff wins that they both have combined. He has more AFC Championship appearances than both of them combined. Um, and he was really a 2 point conversion away from going to the Super Bowl, right? So it's like um, that's just impressive. Like that paired with having comparable winning percentages, three double-digit win seasons, and really turning it around from starting off 11 and 23. He's turned around, been 47, 42, and ranked number 12. So really, if I ranked him after the first two seasons, he could have been bottom 10, and now he's top 12. That's a hell of a turnaround, and really impressive by Rick. So definitely deserves credit, and I'm sure he wants more than just an AFC Championship appearance. And the way he's been playing, he very well might get it. You just got to keep playing at a high level, and he might get more. He might get what he's looking for, his first championship since Madden 17. Um, so moving on, we got Peoples here. Referenced him a lot. Obviously, he came in, he was unranked, and the reasoning is he did play last man. He was very competitive. He probably would have been around 11 or 12, honestly, if I ranked him. So he probably would be right where he is, pretty much, which is funny. Like, I mean, I can say that now, obviously, but like, he just wasn't on the list of users I got because I think he just didn't respond in time. So he just wasn't put on the list, and users that I ranked. But he would have been around the 11 to 15 range in all likelihood, um, based off of his resume last Madden. But this man, he's 11. And wow, the first user 70 in the 70 percentile in win percent, 72.8% win percentage is just, that's a staggering number. It's much higher than the numbers than we've been seeing. Um, it's far and away the highest, but you look at his resume, it's extremely impressive. You got third highest total win percentage. So the third highest total win percentage. That's top three in total win percentage, which is insanely impressive. All seasons double digit win totals. Every single season. 13, 11, 12, 16, 13. Very impressive. Number one seed in season 4, and the only regular season with 16 plus wins recorded this Madden. That's the only 16 win regular season this Madden. Very impressive. It's equivalent essentially to a 15-1, only even a little bit more valued, which were still rare in previous SOBs, but like not as rare. This year they're super rare. Only the only one. Very impressive. made playoffs every season. All five playoff losses were by 3 points or less. Every single playoff loss was by 5 points or less, or by 3 points or less. Excuse me. All five playoff losses were by 3 points or less, by a field goal or less. That is insane margin of defeat. Like that just shows that he plays every game to the wire, and maybe one or two plays don't go his way, and he lost. So maybe and one of five users to make the playoffs every season, which I think did I say that already? I'm not sure. But maybe he's just been unlucky. Really, you look at his regular season totals, win percentages, everything else other than his playoff. Like if you flipped it and had a 5-2 postseason or something like that, he would be top five, like or top three even maybe. Like all he needs is a run to the NFC Championship game, and I think he easily moves into the top 10, and he could very well move even further than that because like the rest of his resume is on point, but he has no conference championship appearances. He made the divisional round 3 of 5 seasons and hasn't reached past that. It's got to be disheartening, but he's mentioned it, and I think this fits him maybe even more than anyone else, maybe aside from Smoke, give or take. But like he's just been like kind of really screwed by Madden. Like Madden has put him in bad situations and just given him bad luck. To lose all five of your playoff games by 3 points or less, I mean, you got to blame him a little bit and say, maybe you're not making the clutch plays at the end of the game. But you also got to say, well, that's just 5 games. Like, that's bad luck. Like, a lot of that's bad luck. Like, Madden is probably screwing him over and probably getting bad luck. Like, that's just rough. But all it's going to take for him to move up is just to break through and have one season. He could feasibly, after one run, move up to the number 2 spot from 11, which is not something you can say for a lot of other guys, especially in number anywhere like in the next few players. But if he goes on, excuse me, and wins the Super Bowl in this season, he will move up to number 2, and that's like guaranteed because of the rest of his resume. It's very impressive. Most impressive resume, um, I think, for a user that has lacked playoff success, for sure. I think period on the list. Um, so that's why we have him at number 11. I think it's clear why he's ahead of everyone else, right? Like they listed all the reasons. I think his resume is much stronger than anyone we ranked so far. To be completely honest. So now we can move into the top 10, and it's where we have J Will. Now, right at surface level, right, you can say, well, Ricks and J Will are not that different, right? Like they have very similar resumes. So like, why is J Will not only ahead of Ricks but also ahead of Peoples, who has such this insane resume that was raving about for so long? Right? Yeah, so Peoples has what, like a 13% uptick in win percentage to J Will. So that's substantial, right? And I've been saying that's substantial, but and they have about even playoff records. So um, you could really like, I think that's the easiest argument you could say so far is to put Peoples at 10 and move J Will down a slot and put him at 11. I think I'd be right there with you if you made a really good argument, but I'll explain to you why I have him where I have him. Well, so you have AFC Championship appearance in season 2, in which he lost narrowly to Mike, who was on a hot streak. The first 2 seasons, Mike was just borderline unbeatable. What he went like 6-1 in the playoffs in the first 2 seasons, like something insane like that. And like he played him to the wire in the AFC Championship game, 17-13, I think, or something like that. So like just a really competitive game, as well as what number 1 season 4, 13-3-1, very impressive. 3 division titles, which is extremely impressive. Clearly puts him ahead of Rick's. I think the 3 division titles coupled with the 13.5 win season, the number 1 seed, the 4 double-digit win seasons, I think that clearly puts him as the top AFC South ranked user. So I think that's out of the way. He's clearly ahead of Rick's, and that's kind of explained. But the reason I put him ahead of Peoples is that I think he has pretty similar consistency in terms of making the playoffs, other than the one season where he missed it. But I think that the one run kind of separates him. So he kind of like has separated himself from Ricks in the sense that like he's had more regular season success, but he's obviously also had equal playoff success. So he has same regular season, or he has greater regular season success than Ricks, equal playoff success to Ricks. equal playoff or greater playoff success than Peoples, and that's what gives him the edge, I guess. He does have probably substantially lower regular season success to Peoples, and slightly greater postseason success, but that's what gives it to him to me. That one run where he could have realistically made the Super Bowl against Mike, I think, is the main reason I have him above Peoples. And you look at the bottom, which I haven't mentioned. 3 of 4 playoff losses, average margin to defeat is approximately 6. So 3 of his 4 playoff losses are touchdown, pretty much by a touchdown or less on average. Um, So that's impressive. This resume is impressive. I wouldn't be mad at you at all if you had Peoples at 10, you had him at 11, you had J Will at 11. But I have him at 10 because of the season 2 run. Obviously beat Key, beat Rondo. That's 2 users who were 13, 14. Um, Strong run there, and then lost to Mike, who's gonna be a top 5 user when we get down there, at the very least, um, or get up there rather. And really, really impressive resume so far for J Will. So. But like I said, wouldn't be mad if you had Peoples ahead of him. This is another thing where I'd probably go to head to head. And even if it was even, I think I'd give it to Peoples. So to be truthfully honest, this is the one where I'm probably the most torn on. I just feel like Jay Will making a run to the AFC Championship game and almost winning. I just feel like that's stronger than what Peoples has put up so far. Not being able to make it to a conference championship game. Um, and you could make the same case about Ricks, but like I said, hasn't had the same consistency as Jay Will or Peoples in the regular season. Ricks has missed the playoffs twice. Jay Will's missed it once. Ricks has had, I think, 2 or 3 seasons of double-digit wins. Jay Will has had 4, and one with 13.5 wins, which I think Ricks did have 13, right? But I don't believe he got the number 1 seed. So being the best team in your conference in the regular season is something to speak about that too. So this is probably the most shaky ground I had to stand on, these 3 slots, because I think you could even argue to have Ricks at 10, Peoples at 12. So like it really depends on how you perceive things. But I think I'm gonna stick. I'm gonna stand by what I have based off the reasoning I've given, and I'm not gonna be mad at anyone who has it differently. But moving on to number 9, moving into the top 10 now, not just on number 10, but into the top 10. We have Casey, he's came in at 8, kind of in at 9. People have been mentioning him as like one of the most disappointing users, which is just ridiculous. Like it doesn't make any sense. Like he's done as well as he's done in every other match, which is like right on the precipice of a Super Bowl appearance, right? So it's like doesn't make any sense that people are saying like he's disappointing. Like what? Doesn't make any sense. I don't understand. That's a false narrative that people are building. But number 1 seed in season 3, won a playoff game every year that he has qualified. An NFC Championship appearance in season 3. 3 seasons of double-digit win totals and playoff appearances. Lost 2 of 3 playoff losses by a combined 2 points, so by 1 point apiece. A division title and 1 of 6 seasons with 15 plus regular season wins that we touched on before with Seymour. Um, that's impressive. Like that's an impressive resume. But we can look over to the side here. It's 10-7 in the regular season, season 1, 1-1, beat Seymour. That's impressive. Lost to Trells. Okay, 8-9 in a tough division. 15-2, which is his crowning achievement. Lost to Justin because he lagged on a field goal. Like that's what he said, and I buy it. His internet's been garbage for years. Like I think because of I think feel like he was even more than Rick's closer to a Super Bowl, because I think a field goal you really can't defend it, whereas like I think Rick's was a 2 point conversion away. Um, so I think which you can defend. Field goal, it's like if you don't get the block animation, you're at the mercy of your opponent in kicking a field goal. So it's like he was really just a field goal make away. I think it was either from taking it to overtime, or I think it was from winning. I think it was 1 point down. And it was from winning the NFC Championship game. So he would have been in the Super Bowl, and it would have been him versus Beige, and his defense was kind of like was really stout. That you're like he could have beaten Beige in that Super Bowl. Like he really could have, and putting up 53 and 38, having a 58% win percentage, being 3% down from Seymour, plus making conference championship game, plus being the only one that we've named so far with 3 playoff wins out of anyone. three double-digit wins in the NFC East, three playoff appearances, which is like what I said, the most competitive division. I think it stands for itself. I'm not really. I don't agree with anyone who puts any of the other three above Casey, considering the context of his division, as well as the 115-2 season, which is insanely impressive. Like to beat Trells in the playoffs, like, and not only that, but then you know to be a field goal away from being in the Super Bowl. He's never had a Super Bowl appearance to my knowledge in SOB, and he was right there. Just need that field goal. I'm sure that's gonna eat at him. I'm surprised he hasn't expressed it more. To be completely honest, I thought he'd be more sick about it, but maybe he is. He's just not expressing it as much. I don't know, but I think his resume, it's number nine. Like it's very clearly number nine. I think number nine, and there's a gap. There's a clear gap between number nine and 10. Like he is very clearly number nine. I don't think there's much of an argument you can really produce that says anyone else like that we've named before him is ahead of him. So to say that he's had a disappointing year is just a false narrative. It's untrue. He's pretty much on par with where he's been. He's hoping to break through because this team has had a lot of talent, right? He wants to win a Super Bowl. So in that sense, yeah, he's disappointed in the sense that he hasn't won a Super Bowl, but he hasn't ever done that. So to be expected to win. I didn't put him as an expectation to win a Super Bowl in the first place. I put him as one of the people expect to make a conference championship, I believe, which he did. So it's like he met expectation. He is where I expected him to be. You want to talk about disappointment? Look at the expectations I had for people, or other people I had for people, and look at where they ended up. So right now he is where he's supposed to be, realistically. If he wants to exceed that Super Bowl berth, or even defeat or victory, obviously would kick him up substantially. So moving to number 8, Console. This is a user who I will acknowledge has been disappointing, considering the expectations I probably unfairly put upon him, considering he hasn't played since Madden 19. But people are greatly over exaggerating the quote unquote disappointment because of the lofty expectations that I put upon him. I mentioned obviously he won 5 Super Bowls last time he played a full Madden. Like he did play Madden 19, but that was a shortened 6 seasons. It was condensed 6 seasons as opposed to a full 11 in SOB 17. That in which he won 5 championships, which is absurd. Like, that's a lot of championships. So like that's why I had him ranked so high, is because the last time he played a full Madden, he showed his skills very eloquently to win 5 championships. Like that's not an easy feat. And in that sense, yes, he's been disappointing. He hasn't won a Super Bowl. He hasn't made a Super Bowl. It's disappointing. I acknowledge that. But he is still clear cut number 8. I think he's clear cut ahead of Casey, who's had a great, impressive resume in his own right. But, first user with 60 wins on the board. Or no, I'm sorry. First user with 3 or more playoff wins with 60 wins on the board. Because Peoples, I believe, had 70 something, right? Or at least 70 something win percentage. But obviously, we'll look at his resume here, and obviously you can see first, he's at 8. He was at 1. He dropped 7 spots. It's not that bad, truthfully. He's still in the top 10. He has a great opportunity still to just win one Super Bowl and move back up really close to where he wants to be. And where SOB is about, like, maybe even less than halfway over, depending on how things are going. So he's gonna have plenty of chances to go and snag that number 1 spot really back, honestly, if he has a great second half with Lamar now. Like he could really, I could see it. I could buy that. I'm buying console stock right now. That's for sure. Personally, but looking at his resume, AFC Championship appearance in season 1, which is his crowning kind of achievement, kind of on paper, 14-3, and then made AFC Championship game. Got blown out by Mike, obviously, who was on a tear, like I said. He used Lamar and that Ravens team to perfection the first 2 seasons, pretty much. Well, not perfection, a 2-point conversion away from perfection. um, but near perfection. Um, in almost 2 Super Bowl championships. But that he just ran into a buzzsaw. 13-4, he lost to Mike again, who, like we said, was a buzzsaw first couple seasons. So he ran into him. 9-8, pretty sure he intentionally tanked down the stretch of the season. This is the season that Raw Dog won the division because he and Key both were vying, as well as many other users, for allegedly a quarterback, I believe, who was like highly touted. I didn't look much into that, but that's what I heard around. That's what I heard surfacing and cycling through the SOB news cycle. um, but 12-5 regular season, obviously 1-1, beat the Texans, lost to the Browns. Um, so that's his other playoff win that he's gotten. And then this past year, he missed the playoffs in a year which I believe he just struggled. I think he just struggled kind of. I don't know what his deal was on that. But I mean, overall, all in all, 3 playoff wins, 60 overall wins, an AFC Championship appearance. Um, he has not recorded a losing season, um, which is good, obviously. Only limited in playoffs by teams who have gone or have won a Super Bowl. So all 3 times have gone on to make the Super. Okay, no. Okay, so basically every team that has eliminated him um, has won a Super Bowl in general, right? So the first year, or Mike won a Super Bowl in general, and Xavier won a Super Bowl in general. But every year he's been beaten. So in season 1, when he was beating to Mike won the Super Bowl. He made the Super Bowl. He won it. Season 2, Mike beat him. He made the Super Bowl. He lost the Super Bowl barely. Season 4, Xavier beat him. He made the Super Bowl, won the Super Bowl. So every season, every year, Conso has lost in the playoffs. The user that has beaten him has gone into it at the very least make a Super Bowl, and um, 2 times have won the Super Bowl. So obviously he's losing to guys who are clearly there for a reason. To the point, he's not getting upset in the playoffs. He's getting beat by guys who are there and are supposed to be there. And he has a commanding 7-3 record against Key, who was supposed to be his division rival this year. Traded with the Bucks with the Jets infamously to basically say, I'm that guy. I'm going to show I'm that guy. I'm going to go in with this #1 guy, this guy who hasn't played since Madden 17, the guy who everyone says is this legend, this Hall of Fame guy, and I'm gonna overtake him, and I'm gonna show how great I am. And he hasn't done that. Console still kind of held clear serve as the 7-3 record is a commanding record over. I can't believe one of the losses is a fair sim in which he intentionally put in backups to take a loss to get a better draft pick. Essentially, it was the tank off basically that year. It was season 3, I believe, still. Um, but yeah, so essentially, really a 7-2 record. But it is a 7-3 record because that's how it works. Like I said, I'm not excluding forces and stuff and fair sims. It just is the way it is. And ultimately, I think everything stands for on its own. I think the win percentage primarily has him above Casey. The fact that he hasn't had a losing season also puts him above Casey. Um, and the fact that every time he's lost to a team, they've went on to make the Super Bowl. So they are supposed to be there. Like they are that good. He's not getting upset in the playoffs. He's getting beat by guys that are supposed to be there and are that good. Um, so I think all these things put him as a clear cut #8. No, he might. You could maybe make an argument to have him higher, but we'll discuss that as we move on. Excuse me, to #7 here, Justin. So yeah, I guess this is a guy you could certainly make the case. Console is above, but wow, what an impressive season for Justin. I think he deserves a round of applause as well. But I think this is clearly the highest jump. Like I'm pretty sure there's no one higher than this. 23-7. That's a 16 spot jump. He jumped half the league to get where he is in the top 10 at #7. Like, bravo to Justin. Impressive, 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 impressive. 45-40 in the regular season, 6-3 in the postseason. What a record in the postseason. 6-3. That's a hell of a record in the postseason. 6-3 is insane. That's by far the best postseason record that we've had so far, and that's primarily what puts him at #7. But we'll get into that. 51-43 overall, so not great, but solid. 54% win percentage. But his resume, these achievements are what have him at #7. Made season 3 Super Bowl. That's his top crowning achievement. Lost the Beach by a couple touchdowns, but to make the Super Bowl, and it was because of Casey missed the field goal, right? Casey makes that field goal. Justin's probably 4 or 5 spots down, realistically, and Casey's probably 3 spots up. So it's like that one missed field goal changes a lot of stuff, right? Obviously, there's a lot of ramifications, a lot of butterfly effect in that sense. But he did miss it, and Justin, obviously has Super Bowl appearance, which he's never had. He's never had a Super Bowl appearance. I talked about before the year started how Justin had the ability. He showed it in Madden 20 when he got hot in the first year with that Steelers team. against the Jaguars, took me to overtime. Against me, I was the Jaguars in the AFC Championship game, first year, took me to overtime. That was a nip-tuck game. It was really tough. Barely snuck out in overtime. I knew he had the capability of getting hot and making a run. He's shown it multiple times. He's shown it a few times in his career, and this year it's culmination. It came together. Like he has made runs this year. He's made multiple deep runs. He's shown that, and maybe this is the formula for him going forward, right? Um, get into a division that's objectively, one of, if not the weakest divisions in the league, right? Going forward, kind of muddle through the regular season because regular season, he's kind of fine. He reminds me a lot of like Joe Flacco, right? Like Joe Flacco had mediocre regular seasons. He kind of muddled through, but if he got into the playoffs, it was lights, it was fires, bombs away, it was, fireworks, and he's throwing the ball. He's airing it out against Peyton Manning, he's airing the ball out against Tom Brady, he's airing the ball out against Andrew Luck, and just outdueling these high level quarterbacks that are better than him. But he's playing at their level, if not above them, in the playoffs. Like it reminds me a lot of him, and not to say it as an insult, but just in the sense that like he muddles through the regular season, really successful in the postseason when he gets there. So maybe he just plays down to his competition. So maybe that's kind of his philosophy that he should take going forward. Is like I'm going to play in a bad division, increase my chances of getting into the tournament. And once I get into the tournament, I know I can beat anybody. That's kind of his philosophy, and it works. It has worked this year. And maybe that's what he wants to, try to do going forward. But 2 NFC Championship appearances, obviously, tied fifth in playoff wins. 6 playoff wins is substantial. 6 playoff wins, that's really impressive. Like to end the year on, like if he didn't get any more playoff wins, that's still impressive. Six in a 6-3 record, like that's impressive. He won at least one playoff game every time he's qualified for the postseason, which also Casey had. But he obviously went 2-1 and 3-1 on 2 separate occasions, and then obviously 1-1. So if he gets in, he's won at least his first game, right? That's impressive. Combined 3-1 record against Smoke and TJ in playoff games. Those are two Super Bowl caliber users. Obviously, TJ has won one already this year. Smoke has been to one. He's a 3-1 record against both of those guys in the playoffs. That's impressive. That is insanity. Honestly, that's really good. And he's only been eliminated in the playoffs by teams in the top five. He lost to Trells, who will be in the top five. Obviously, he's not the next. He's not number 6. So that's a little bit of a spoiler. He lost to Beige, who's obviously not going to be number 6. That's not a spoiler. And he lost to TJ, who's obviously not going to be number 5 or number 6. So that's another spoiler. Minor spoiler because there's only 6 users left. So, but basically saying that he lost to only users in the top 5. That is really good. Like insane high quality resume for Justine. That's really impressive. Super, super impressive. Um, really, hats off to him for sure. Um, and I think he's clear cut number 7 because of all the things I named. 6 playoff wins is double anyone else has had so far at this point. I think you can make a case that Console's ahead of him, but it'd be really tough, honestly, because of the 6-3 to 3-3. Like I think it would be tough to make a case for Console ahead of him. I think it's possible. I think it would be tough. I could see someone do it and convince me, but they would have to come with a strong case. I would have to see it. But I think clear cut in my mind right now, number 7. But moving on to number 6, you got Smoke. Smoke honestly come in and did what I've expected him to do. He's quote unquote underperformed a little bit because he started at number 4 and he's number 6. But I mean, he's the second highest ranked team to not have won a Super Bowl. Like so, 4 of the 5 teams above him have won a Super Bowl. Obviously, he's appeared one, but we'll get to that. 60-35 total. 6-4 in the playoffs, which is not as impressive, just seems, but slightly less than. I mean, I'd say it's slightly more impressive probably because he made the playoffs one more time. So he has the same amount of wins, more appearances. So, you look and you say, tied 5th in playoffs wins along with Justine. Made season 4 Super Bowl, lost Xavier by a touchdown and 2-1 conversion. Made playoffs 4 of 5 seasons. One of 6 users to have at least doubled their total wins to losses. Well, that's not accurate. That was before I updated the win total and loss total. So yeah, that's not completely accurate. But the other 5 users who do have double their wins to losses are Beige, Mike, X, Trills, Peoples. He does have 60 to 35, so he's close. And I guess if he wins 10 games this season, well, I guess he would have to win more than that. I don't know what the exact math is, but he'd have to have double or whatever. So that is inaccurate, but 60 and 35 is still impressive. That's misinformation, so that's apology to me for keeping that in there. Number one seed in season two, obviously 15-2 season, one of the 6 seasons that are 15 plus wins. Obviously, mentioned Seymour, mentioned Peoples. Um, I believe mentioned one other one. There was a 15 win season, Casey. Yes, that's 3 of them. This is the fourth one. There are going to be 2 more that were 15 plus win seasons. He has one of them. He was the number one seed. He played really close with TJ, I believe, in the FC Championship game. Could have went either way if I remember correctly. It was a couple late plays that kind of shifted the tide of the game. And multiple OT/one possession playoff wins. He has more than one playoff wins in which um, they were one possession games or they were an overtime win, like essentially. So a lot of close playoff wins, basically. Um, so his resume, what's his resume ahead of Justin is A, his total win percentage. B, he's made the playoff 4 times, not 3 times. C, he's had one of the 15 win seasons. Justin is not. And also, his Super Bowl was a one possession game, whereas Justin's was a 2 possession game. So you add all those things together, and it's clear cut. The top 6 is clear cut in my brain. Even the top 8, I'd say. I'd say the top 8 is like you're not gonna really convince me. I don't think very unless you come up with a really strong argument that any of these guys are ahead of where I put them or below where I put them. But yeah, number 6, Smoke, really been impressive. You look at that season 4 season that he had, to kind of bounce back from that loss in season 3 to Justin where he made the Super Bowl. Um, he obviously beat his brother. He beat Peoples and then he beat Trells to reach the Super Bowl. Really impressive. Um, and then you look at season 5. Um, he obviously underwhelmed against Justin again. So that goes back to what Justin has a 3-1 record against he and TJ combined in the playoffs. So that's part of it is those 2 wins. So Justin seems to be partially kind of his kryptonite and stuff. So I guess I could see a case then. I guess in that case, that Justin's ahead of him because he kind of beat him in the playoffs. 2-0 against him in the playoffs. So I mean, I could see a case, but I think that Smoke, because of the remainder of his resume, even if you account for head to head, I think Smoke is clear cut ahead of him. So moving on to the top 5. The top 5 users moving into these users are obviously the best of the best. Top 5. It's something commonly referred to in SOB. You want to be in the top 5. It's the 5 best. These are the 5 bestest men in my mind so far. Trells started off as number 2, currently number 5. Not really disappointing. I mean, I guess for him, considering his expectations, I think I predicted him I put him in the tier with Beige and Console to win at least one Super Bowl. So in that sense, yeah, he's been quote unquote underwhelming and underachieving, but he's had a really great season, or a great SOB year. He's the only user to win at least one playoff game every season. To me, that alone puts him in the top 5. Like, I don't really have to mention everything else, but I will. Like, the only user to win. Think about that for a second. The only user, including the other teams who are ahead of him and won a Super Bowl, the only user to win at least one playoff game every season. That is the definition of consistency. When I ranked him in going into the year, I ranked him saying he has the highest floor of any user in SOB, and that still stands true. He has the highest floor. He wins a playoff game at least like one every year. Like that is the definition of the highest floor in SOB. Like I think that stands and holds true for certain. Moving on, tied for most conference championship appearances with 3. You have to believe he's tied with Beige, maybe Xavier. Beige and Xavier. Beige has 3 for sure. I don't know if Xavier has 3. I guess we'll see when we move to him. But I think he's either tied with just Beige or Beige and Xavier, I believe. And TJ, maybe also TJ. I don't know. Apologies if I'm mixing some stuff up. I guess we'll clarify it when we move to them. But made Super Bowl season 1, lost to Mike by a couple touchdowns. He had a severely inferior team to Mike. in the first season, so he kind of overachieved, made the Super Bowl the first season. I know what that's like. I made the first Super Bowl with the Jaguars in Madden 20, and got met by Bish, who had a severely superior team, and it was just like a mismatch. Like there's nothing I really could have done, even schematically. Like I guess if I played perfect theoretically and schematically planned for him perfectly, then you could have barely edged it out. But that would have been just like this. It would have been significant upsets. Like that's severe. Like so, Mike did what he was supposed to do. He was a buzzsaw. He broke their one in Super Bowl. Trells was kind of undermanned. And moving on to his next achievement, one of 5 users to record double-digit wins every season. Mike, X, Beige, and Peoples are all those other users. So that's 5 users to record double-digit wins every season at least. Um, Fourth highest total win percentage and tied for third most playoff wins with 7 to 5. Obviously tied for most for third most playoff wins. One of 2 users to be ranked in top 5 for both rankings. So obviously see who the other one is in a few minutes. I mean, this resume is really impressive. You can see I can go on for like a while talking about how impressive this is. This is really impressive, but I mean, truthfully, I don't think. I mean, I know Trells is not satisfied with this and not happy with this. He doesn't have a Super Bowl. I know he wants at least one. Um, so I know he's not happy with this, and I don't think he wants me to keep talking about this honestly because he doesn't have a championship. You have this impressive resume. I think truthfully, if he wins a Super Bowl, you can make a legitimate case that he is the number one spot, which I don't think you can say for anyone else on the list who does not already have at least one Super Bowl. Um, so I think you can say it for anyone in the top 5, but he's the only one who doesn't currently have a championship that you could say he will win one. And I, even though Beach has 2, because of the remainder of his resume being as impressive as it is, I think you could make a case and say, if he wins 4 playoff wins, goes 11-5 total in postseason as a postseason win, wins 13 games in the regular season, he could be number one. I could see it. I could make the case, and I might buy into it depending on like kind of how things are presented to me. So, really impressive by Trails, but not what he wants. And we're gonna move into now Super Bowl territory. 4 teams who have won Super Bowls this Madden. Uh, Applause to those guys, all 4 of them. Really impressive. Really difficult to do in SOB. Win a Super Bowl. TJ obviously he won his second one total in his career. Um, and the other 3 we'll get to. But just for TJ right now, started at 7, moved up to 4, so he's overachieved. I predicted him to make a conference championship, and obviously he's far exceeded that expectation of just making a conference championship. He's far exceeded that, but he is the lowest ranked user to win a Super Bowl, which could be controversial because in reality, in my mind, you can flip any of the 3 who have won only one, and obviously B stands alone, and obviously that's like kind of speak for itself because with the 2 championships. But we'll look at his achievements and say, one season 2 Super Bowl over Mike 45-44. We've referenced this a couple times before. 2-point conversion away. Hollywood Brown dropped a 2-point conversion, but that it happens. Like he played well enough to where all it took was one mistake, and Mike lost the game, and he won the Super Bowl. And you can say, oh well, Hollywood Brown dropped a 2-point conversion, but I mean, so what? Stuff like that happens in real life all the time. Brandon Bostic drops an onside kick, and the Packers don't go to the Super Bowl in 2014. Obviously Malcolm Butler interception. If the Seahawks run the ball at the 1 yard line in 2014, the Seahawks win the Super Bowl. If the Falcons were the clock out in 2016, they win the Super Bowl against the Patriots. Obviously, you can go back to countless number of mistakes and miscues that have cost players games, drops that have cost players games or teams games. So it happens. Like it's part of the game. Like it's part of real life. It's part of Madden. Um, He's tied 5th in playoff wins with 6. 6-3, still very impressive. Obviously, the fact that Jesse also has a 6-3 record, very impressive. He's equal to TJ at number 4, really impressive. Made season 5 Super Bowl against Beach, lost 42-21, so kind of got blown out in that Super Bowl. It was 28-0, I think, at one point, so kind of rough. Got blown out in the Super Bowl, but it still adds to his resume and it's impressive. Made 2 Super Bowls, the only other user. or right here it says one of 3 teams to appear in 2+ Super Bowls. The other two are Beige and Mike to appear in 2 Super Bowls, and then that's the highest amount of Super Bowls that anyone has appeared in this madness too, which speaks to the parity. Obviously, again, win has gotten first playoff win always reaches the Super Bowl. So whenever he wins a playoff game that year, he reaches the Super Bowl at least. So if he loses in the first round, he's out. But if he wins, he's gone on a run to make the Super Bowl. So it shows you that he can get hot real quick and he can flip the switch just like as well as anybody this year. And he has a Super Bowl championship. And you break down a season to season. You say 9-8, disappointing year in the first year, lost to Just Team. Second year, really great regular season, got the number 1 seed, I believe, 15-2. And then beat Trell, Smoke, and Mike like that. People talk about Xavier's run, which was really impressive, and we'll get to that. But to say that he beat Trell, Smoke, and Mike, who are all top 6 in their own right, and um, Mike obviously is a Super Bowl champion, was going for back to back. That might be the best run. Truthfully, it might be the best run so far. This man really undervalued. Then he kind of had a Super Bowl slump, which kind of is that's the main reason he's at 4 and not higher, because he could be at 2, really, right? If he doesn't have the Super Bowl slump in season 3, because he made 2 Super Bowls, so you could, and he beat Mike, who is the number 2 guy, right? Or yeah, I guess I spoiled it, but yeah, who is the number 2 guy? He beat him, so you could make the argument, he is number 2, TJ's number 2, right? Um, but because of the Super Bowl slump, where he went 6-11, missed the playoffs, played really bad. Kyler got hurt. It was just a debacle of a season. He had a Super Bowl hangover. I think that's what happened at 4. That's what has him at 4. It brings his overall win percentage down. It brings his regular season win percentage down. And it doesn't look as nice on your resume, right? Like he would have if he had all playoff appearances across the board, season 1 through 5 playoff appearances. I think he's at the second spot, even with the blowout loss to the Bijan Super Bowl. I think he's at the second spot, but that missing the playoffs coupled with getting blown out by Bijan in the Super Bowl, I think has him at 4, and I think that's clear. To be completely honest, because of those 2 things. Now you could make a case because of the 2 playoff or Super Bowl appearances, he's above Xavier at the very least, right? But I think because of Xavier's consistency, you rank him ahead, and I'll get to that in a second as we move on to number 3. Last year, Xavier was ranked 6, or going into the year rather. Uh, he's now ranked 3. I think he has an equal regular season record to TJ, 57-28. Um, uh, but win percentage of 67%, which is very high. Obviously, won season 4 Super Bowl over Smoke 29-21. During the playoff run, beat Mike, Console, Beige, and Smoke. That is what we just referenced to with TJ's. That is regarded as the best playoff run? It probably is. TJ's might be, like I said. Um, you can make an argument for either. We're also going to get to Mike's and Beige's Super Bowl runs, and you can debate, which one's the strongest. In my mind, well, we'll wait until we get all of them, and then I'll rank the Super Bowl runs as well. Because why not? But consecutive AFC Championship appearances in season 3, season 4, back-to-back AFC Championship appearances. Second most playoff wins with 8. He's not even tied. He's clear-cut second most playoff wins behind Beige. One of the users to make the playoffs every season, 8-6. Well, that's a separate point, but yeah, one of the users to make the playoffs every season, and that's the consistency I'm talking about. That's the main reason I have him above TJ, because he's shown higher consistency than TJ. He's made the playoffs every season after he won the Super Bowl. He did have somewhat of a slump, right? An SOB low, 10 wins, but or like this SOB low rather. Like that's what I'm saying. That's what I meant. Is SOB 22 low for him, 10 wins. But he still made the playoffs, still won a playoff game, beat Mike, and then lost to Beige in the division round. That's nothing to scoff at all. And then obviously an 8-6 record against Mike, including playoffs 3-2. And I didn't include head to head for a lot of things, but when I got closer and closer to the top, I guess it became more important, especially with these 2. I think with these 2 it matters more than anything. And the fact that I think I included that Because despite that, like even in spite of that, I wanted to make that clear that like to acknowledge that the fact that he does have the edge over Mike in head to head and still put Mike ahead of him because of Mike's resume. Um, and but also to acknowledge that I'm aware of that he's ahead of him in head to head, and that I wouldn't be upset if you ranked Xavier at number two, right? Like that's fair. I think that's fair if you put Xavier at two. It's fair if you put TJ at two. Honestly, it's fair if you put any of these guys, any of three of these guys at two. I think it's clear that B just won, and we'll get to that in a few minutes as well. Um, Obviously, or I already said that 1 of 5 users make playoffs every season. I think yeah, that pretty much covers a lot of why I have him where he's at. Um, 1-1 in the first season, the playoffs. 0-1 the second season. 2-1, 4-0, 1-1. He's won a playoff game every year except for one. So like that's also impressive too. Like to show that level of consistency. And that one loss was to Mike, who's a division rival, and both of them have gone at it in the playoffs. So, but moving on to number two though, who is Mike at number two. Obviously, it was number 9 last year. Came in at number 9, rather. Now number 2. 64 and 21 regular season, 7 and 4 post, 73% win percentage, almost 74. Look at his resume here. We got season one Super Bowl, 41-27 over Trails. Obviously, we touched on that. He was a buzzsaw the first 2 seasons. Wiped through everyone with 6-1. Uh, Lost obviously TJ because of the drop 2-point conversion that was referenced to. Um, he went a combined 26-8 in the regular season, 6-1 in the postseason. In the first 2 seasons, which is absolutely like a force of nature. The team to be not a team to be reckoned with. Um, to keep moving down his resume, made a consecutive Super Bowl, obviously. Lost to TJ 45-44, in which Hollywood dropped a 2-point conversion. Obviously, we mentioned a lot of times, like I just mentioned. Boasts an impressive 4-1 record over console, including the playoffs where he's 2-0. So it's very impressive. Obviously, didn't usually hold head to heads or anything, but when obviously someone emphasizes it, and it's notable, like a user like console, in which who doesn't usually get beaten like constantly like that by one person. It's very notable and something definitely to put high in your resume. Second highest total win percentage and tied for third most playoff wins. With 7-4, with 7 wins and 7-4. Since going 6-1, though, obviously he's been 1-3 since then, which kind of has him at 2 as opposed to obviously potentially 1. Um, has playoff wins against Trells, Console, J Will, and Xavier, all in the current top 10. Highest total win percentage. Well, it says second highest total win percentage and total win percentage. Highest total win percentage is not correct, I believe, or maybe it is correct. Second highest total win percentage and tie for. I don't know. I don't know why I have conflicting information there, but depending on what Beige is at, he will have either the highest or the second highest. I'm not sure. Maybe I'm probably meant second highest regular season playoff or regular season win percentage is what I meant. I think, and then I meant highest total win percentage, which I think he does have. 1 of 5 users make the playoffs every season. Um, 5 double-digit win seasons. Obviously, one where he won 15. One of the 6 seasons that won 15 or more games that we mentioned multiple times throughout this. Um, Obviously, the main key is the Super Bowl win over Trells. First 2 seasons, um, the buzzsaw run. Obviously, his run in the first season, he beat Xavier, Console, and Trells. So I mean, you could argue that's the best run too. Honestly, like because it's season 1, it probably isn't, but it definitely is in the conversation. Um, but yeah, to have over 70 total wins, to have a Super Bowl victory, to be in 2 Super Bowls, um, to be 7-4 in the playoffs, to have hold it the highest total uh, overall win percentage. All those things together have him at number 2, and the only reason he's not at number 1 is because of what Beach has done. And we'll move on to that and finish it up. Um, Obviously, yeah. So he has the second. Beach has the second highest total win percentage. Mike does have the highest total win percentage. So what I meant and didn't put, it was a typo, was highest
or second highest total regular season win percentage, I believe. Is probably what I meant to put. So, to get into Bijan's resume now, though, obviously one season 3 Super Bowl over Justin, 24-10. One season 5 Super Bowl over TJ, 42-21. So his average margin of victory in the Super Bowl is what, 5 divided by 2, give or take 17 and a half. So 3 possessions really is his average margin of victory in the playoffs, I believe. My math's correct. Which is pretty impressive. Like that's very impressive in the Super Bowl rather. His average margin of victory in the Super Bowl is 17 and a half. Very impressive. Won 2 of the last 3 Super Bowls, which is obviously very impressive. The only user with 2+ Super Bowls. Mike could be on the list, obviously isn't. Um, 3 consecutive AFC Championship appearances. Won his division every single season, which obviously I didn't put for other people. Like even though I think, well, I don't know if anyone else has done that is this high or at all. I wonder if anyone else has won their division every season. Should have looked into that more. Something I will look into more for the final rankings. Second highest total win percentage. Yeah. So he has the second highest total win percentage behind Mike, who has the highest total win percentage. But he has the highest or second highest or regular season win percentage. I'm not really sure. Um, Only user currently to place in top 3 for both rankings. So yeah, he came in starting at number 3. He moved up to number 1. Um, 1 of 5 users to make the playoffs every season. Um, yeah, who we mentioned before. Most playoff wins at 9-3, which is insane, and tied for most conference championship appearances at 3, which we mentioned before as well. So to have a 9-3 postseason record, to have 2 Super Bowl victories, to be 71-26, have a 73% total win rate, it's super impressive, and it's clearly places him with the number 1 spot. Right now, truthfully, no one really, even with a good run, it's going to be unlikely for anyone to surpass him. Even one of the other Super Bowl winners, they would have to have an excellent run to surpass him, but it's unlikely, honestly, with one run that they're going to surpass him with 2. Like there'll be some tiebreakers in there, and you'll be able to make an argument. But I think right now, I mean, obviously it's clear cut, and it's going to be clear cut for a bit. So before I conclude though, ranking Super Bowl runs for all the Super Bowl winning teams, right? So Bija's run where he beat Rondo, Xavier, and Jussim, I'd probably put at the bottom of the 5, right? So that's the 5th most impressive Super Bowl run, probably. Although it is impressive because every Super Bowl run is very impressive, right? That's probably the least impressive. Um, the second least impressive is probably it's probably here. Let's look back at TJ's here. Trell, Smoke, Mike. You have Xavier's, which is very impressive, and then you have Xavier, Console, Trells. I mean, these are splitting hairs. I think that's probably the second least impressive. Like, so that's probably 4th, but from Mike. So 5th is Bija's first Super Bowl in season 3. 4th is Mike's, also because it's season 1, so it's like not as impressive because their teams aren't as refined as they want. So that's probably why that's 4th. Third, I would say, is probably TJ's with Drells, then Smoke, then Mike. Second, I'd say, is Beach's second Super Bowl win, where he beat Xavier, then Rick's, then and TJ. And you can say, well, Rick's in there, and he's not as impressive as some of the other ones, but because of the degree of difficulty and the how far he pushed uh Beach, I'd say that qualifies, and that was really the only close game. He destroyed Xavier. I think destroying Xavier and destroying TJ in the Super Bowl was more impressive than TJ kind of edging the other ones out barely. And then the most impressive Super Bowl run, I think, is Xavier's. I think it's rightfully hyped up, beating Mike, Console, Beige, Smoke. You're beating the number 2 team, the number 8 team, the number 1 team, the number 6 team in a Super Bowl run. That's phenomenal. Um, I don't think that's really matched in terms of Super Bowl runs right now. But Bish, so if that was one, if you're ranking one Super Bowl run, that's the best Super Bowl run. But in terms of overall resume, top user, clearly Bish. Um, and obviously you can go back and look at everyone else's if you're not sure where everyone else stands. But for right now, 5 seasons in, that's where everyone stands for me. This has been a great, entertaining as a spectator. It's been a really entertaining SOB to watch thus far. A lot of parity, a lot of like anyone can kind of win any game, so it's fun to watch. At least it's probably not fun to play, in the sense that like it stresses people out a lot and stuff because you never know what could happen with Madden throwing random stuff at you. So if I had to take any Madden off, I'm glad it's this one, and it's been certainly fun so far. Hopefully, it keeps the closest to a dynasty has been B so far, winning 2 of the last 3. So honestly, I'm rooting for more kind of like parity and like more competitiveness to like so more people just can kind of win Super Bowls and there could be more arguments made for who the best is. Like I'd like to see, everyone makes their own case. I'm really entertained to see who else wins and how this kind of second half unfolds, so to speak. And yeah, that was my SOB 22 so far user rankings from 32 to 1 and my reasonings all here. And if you have, like I said at the beginning, if you have any questions to ask me why I rank certain players ahead of other players or anything like that, um, I will do my best to answer as soon as possible and to clarify anything that I may not have clarified here. So, um, yeah, thanks everyone for anyone who watched to this point, and yeah, good luck to you in the remainder of SOB 22.